Chapter 1671. Rebirth took at least a day to update every time it was released. Since there were fewer changes this time, the update was completed in less than 2 hours. Just as Wuji expected, the system update was aimed at the blacksmith profession. It seemed like the game company couldn't stand for Chopper forging hundreds of godly equipment in a row. After this update, it was much harder for blacksmiths to reach the Grandmaster level. Apart from that, a Grandmaster blacksmith success rate was originally above 60%. With a professional blacksmith like Chopper, his success rate was basically raised to 100%. After the update, the success rate for Grandmaster blacksmiths didn't change. However, there was an additional condition. The success rate for epic equipment and above was lowered to 10%, which was a full 50% decrease. This meant that 6 out of 10 equipment could be successfully forged, but only 1 could be successfully forged. The probability was just a statistic to the game company, but to the players, it wasn't as simple as dropping from 6 to 1. Chopper could use his skills to increase the success rate to the maximum. As for the 10% success rate, it was impossible to make up for it with his skills. Even a professional like Chopper had to act according to the situation. However, the players in the game didn't object to this update. In fact, most of them were happy to see this. It was completely reasonable for the players to have such a reaction. After all, the direct victims this time were only 2 Grandmaster blacksmiths. In any case, they weren't the unlucky ones. Moreover, most of the players in the game couldn't afford epic equipment. Even if Chopper could mass-produce epic equipment, it wouldn't be beneficial to the ordinary players. On the contrary, the Grandmaster blacksmiths were targeted by the system. The number of epic equipment produced would be strictly controlled, and the ordinary players wouldn't be left too far behind by the experts of the big guilds. Therefore, it was human nature to have such a mentality of taking pleasure in others' misfortune. As the direct victims of this update, the system didn't say anything to Wang Yu and Chopper. The system was the one who set the rules of the game. Whoever affected the balance of the game would be patched. In the end, the players didn't have the right to explain, and they could only blame themselves for being unlucky. From this, it could be seen that the strongest weapon in the game was the patch, of course. There were 2 sides to every coin. The success rate of forging equipment had decreased by a lot. However, the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. If they continued mass-producing epic equipment, the more epic equipment they produced, the less valuable they would be. By the time the other blacksmiths reached the Grandmaster rank, epic equipment would be a common sight. After this update, although the success rate of crafting had decreased, the threshold for becoming a guru-level subclass had also increased significantly. Originally, the advancement of a subclass was already very difficult. Now that the difficulty had been greatly increased, the advancement was even more out of reach. Therefore, for a long time to come, there would only be 2 master-level subclasses in the game. Wang Yu. What does it mean to monopolize technology? Clearly, this was it. It wasn't hard to see that while the game company's behavior was unsightly, they still left some benefits for the victims, Wang Yu and Lu Zilong. After all, as long as there was a monopoly, the monopolist would have the absolute right to speak in this industry. Wasn't it just a drop in the forging success rate? All he had to do was raise the forging price or equipment's price. Originally, it was 100 gold coins per forging, but now it had risen to 1,000 gold coins. The equipment that was originally worth several 100,000 yuan had now risen to millions. The resources in the game are limited. If the big guilds wanted to forge or buy equipment, they would have to desperately compete with the normal players for resources. In the end, the ones who would suffer would definitely not be the big guilds or the monopolists, but the people who would gloat over the misfortune of others. The next day, Wang Yu went online early after taking a look at the update on the official website. As soon as he went online, Wang Yu received a message from Blood Red War Flag. Nyoga, take care. Be careful in the future. Seeing Blood Red War Flag's message, Wang Yu's head was filled with question marks. What the hell did this mean? Was it a threat? It didn't seem like it. It was more like a warning. There was no difference between a threat and a warning. Fortunately, Wang Yu was a broad-minded person. He rarely argued with others over a sentence. let alone his relationship with Blood Red War Flag. As for Blood Red War Flag's message, Wang Yu didn't take it to heart at all and closed the message window. In Xuanzhen's encampment, it was still in full swing. After the system update, the reduction in the success rate of crafting epic equipment did not deter the guild leaders. Instead, they were more enthusiastic than the day before. After all, the big guilds basically had advanced blacksmiths, so at first, everyone was still hoping to get lucky. If their own guild's blacksmiths were promoted to Grandmaster, wouldn't they save on a mining area? However, after the update, all the blacksmiths had no hope of being promoted. Thus, the Grandmaster blacksmiths in the game became Xuanzhen's monopoly. The character of the Quanjin sect was well known in the guild circle. Everyone knew that this group of people would rather die than suffer a loss if they tried to take advantage of others. Raising the price in the face of the wind was a basic operation of theirs. In order to prevent the Quanjin sect from making even more excessive demands, the guild leaders of these big guilds naturally had to forge the equipment as soon as possible. Chopper was a guy who had a passion for blacksmithing engraved in his bones. He started working early in the morning. After all, he was a highly skilled blacksmith. Even if the system lowered the success rate to 10%, he could still rely on his skills to increase the success rate as much as possible. Basically, out of every 3 pieces of equipment, he would successfully forge one. Moreover, every piece of equipment was of the highest quality. Seeing that Chopper was handling this small matter with ease, Wang Yu simply left Xuanzhen's encampment. "Where are you?" With a flash of white light, Wang Yu appeared in front of Yu Huicheng and sent a message to Wuji. "Tavern." Very quickly, Wuji replied, "I'll be there soon." After Wang Yu closed the message, he left the teleportation point and walked towards the tavern. During this time of the morning, there weren't many players going to school or work. Other than a few professional players, there weren't many people on the streets. Naturally, the tavern was also empty. Pushing open the door of the tavern, Wang Yu saw Wuji drinking by himself. This kid's seat was always the most conspicuous in the tavern. Drinking so early in the morning? Why are you so addicted to alcohol? Wang Yu couldn't help but tease. Every time he saw Wuji in the tavern, Wuji would be drinking. Chapter 1672. What you said makes sense. Wang Yu grabbed the cup and drank it in one gulp. He thought about it and said, "Actually, I don't like to drink either. It burns my brain and costs money." "Costs money? There's no such thing." Wuji smiled and snapped his fingers at the owner of the tavern. "I'm the guild leader of the city lord. As usual, put the money on his tab." "Got it." The owner of the tavern looked at Wang Yu with a smile and bowed to the two of them respectfully. The gold in Wang Yu's bag jumped, and 2 went missing. From the owner's attitude, it was not hard to tell that this was not the first time Wuji had done this. Damn! Seeing the gold in his bag deducted by the system, Wang Yu was shocked. "Did you trick me like this in the past?" "Yeah," Wuji said without hesitation. "Why else do you think I'm always the last to leave? Don't you know how to trick others?" Wang Yu was furious. "Those bastards in Xuanzhen?" Wuji rolled his eyes and said, "These guys are all as smart as dogs. They can sense that even a penny is missing from their pockets. Unlike you, you don't even look at the gold coins in your bag." Damn! Wang Yu collapsed. He was such a righteous person. How could he have such a shameless friend? The people in Xuanzhen played the game more punctually than they did at work. Not long after, the people in Xuanzhen had gathered. Creak! Just as everyone was about to leave the tavern, the door was pushed open from the outside. Then, a group of players walked in. The person in the lead was no stranger to the people from the Quanjin sect. He was none other than Thousand Miles Crimson, whom they had met once before. Although this brat didn't have much of a reputation, his words and arrogant attitude had left a deep impression on the people from the Quanjin sect. Behind Thousand Miles Crimson, there were more than 10 players. Most of these players were the core members of Blood Alliance. Xuanzhen had a good relationship with Blood Alliance. They actually formed a group to clear a dungeon together. Although they did not know each other's names, they looked familiar. Yo-ho! I didn't expect this arrogant brat to have such tastes. When the members of Xuanzhen Guild saw Thousand Miles of Blood, they couldn't help but tease him in the guild channel. "Wuji, perhaps you too are like-minded. He's not here to drink. However, just as Big Brother was teasing Wuji, Wang Yu suddenly frowned and said, "These guys seem to be coming for us." Hearing Wang Yu's words, the people of the Chuanjin sect couldn't help but be stunned. They clearly weren't familiar with this brat. Why was he looking for them? As expected, before Wang Yu even finished speaking, Thousand Miles brought the Blood Alliance members to Chuanjin's side. After stopping, Thousand Miles Crimson looked at the people of Chuanjin Guild and smiled. He extended his hand to Wang Yu and said, "Brother Iron Ox." As the saying goes, one does not hit a smiling person. Wang Yu had a high level of upbringing. Although he didn't like Thousand Miles Crimson's fake smile, he still extended his hand and shook Thousand Miles Crimson's hand. "Sit." Thousand Miles Crimson pointed at the seat in front of him and gestured for Wang Yu to sit. He then said to Wuji's group, as if he was chasing away flies, "There's nothing for you to do here. Please leave." When Wang Yu heard this, he couldn't help but frown. It was obvious that Thousand Miles Crimson's attitude towards his friend made Wang Yu very dissatisfied. F***CK, F***CK, F***CK. As for Chuanjin's group, when they heard Thousand Miles Crimson's words, they immediately exploded. To place one's pride, they were so angry that they cursed 3 times. Chuanjin had been in the game for so long and had seen all sorts of big shots. Even a ruthless person like evildoers run wild had to be polite in front of Chuanjin. Who was this Thousand Miles Crimson to dare to act so arrogantly? The hot-tempered Mingdu wouldn't be used to acting arrogantly. He raised his hand and aimed his staff at Thousand Miles Crimson. Then, Mingdu raised his staff slightly. Boom! A bolt of lightning descended from the sky and struck Thousand Miles Crimson. However, just as the lightning was about to strike Thousand Miles Crimson tilted his body slightly, causing Mingdu's lightning to hit nothing but the ground. Seeing this scene, Chuanjin's group was stunned. Not only was Wuji's group surprised, but even Wang Yu was surprised. After playing the game for so long, everyone knew each other well. Of course, everyone was clear about Mingdu's abilities. Although this kid's character was vile, he was definitely strong. Moreover, he attacked without any warning. Ordinary professional players wouldn't be able to take advantage of him. Even when Wang Yu first fought with Mingdu, he was almost struck by Mingdu's lightning. Who would have thought that this Thousand Miles Crimson, who seemed to be asking for a beating, would actually have such skills? He could easily dodge Mingdu's magic. It seemed that this kid had the qualifications to be arrogant. Mingdu, right? At this moment, Thousand Miles Crimson raised his eyelids and glanced at Mingdu. He then waved his hand and said, "Send him away." Just as Thousand Miles Crimson finished speaking, a black-clothed assassin suddenly rushed out from behind him. This assassin held a dagger in his hand as he stepped on the table and charged at Mingdu. Seeing this assassin, Chuanjin's group was once again stunned. If Thousand Miles Crimson was arrogant, then this assassin was even more arrogant. This assassin didn't even use stealth. Instead, he raised his dagger and faced Chuanjin head-on. This clearly showed that he didn't place Chuanjin in his eyes. In the blink of an eye, North Sea Yoyu, who stood beside Mingdu, picked up a bench and threw it at the black-clothed assassin. But just as the stool in Dark North Yoyu's hand was about to smash into the assassin's head, the assassin ducked and dodged the stool. He activated Swift Step and charged toward Radiant City, leaving a trail of afterimages in his wake. He raised his saber and stabbed forward. What amazing reflexes! Seeing the assassin dodge the bench so nimbly, Wuji raised his eyebrows in surprise. It had to be known that North Sea Yoyu and the assassin were only separated by a table. At such a close distance, if North Sea Yoyu was caught off guard and swung the bench at him, an ordinary person wouldn't even have the time to react. Yet, this assassin had easily dodged it. His reflexes were simply astonishing. Wuji had played the game for a long time and had participated in many professional competitions. However, there were less than 10 players with such quick reflexes. Moreover, most of them were martial arts practitioners like Wang Yu. Could it be that this assassin was also a martial arts expert? While Wuji was still in a daze, the assassin's dagger had already reached Mingdu's chest. The assassin's face revealed a disdainful smile. What bullsh asterisk T professional champion team? They're just SOSO. Chapter 1673. The assassin hurriedly turned his head, and the big round face of the tavern owner appeared in front of the assassin with a smile. Sir, this is a small business. The assassin nearly spat out a mouthful of blood when he heard the tavern owner's words. What does it have to do with me? I didn't break that bench. The assassin flailed his arms as he tried to break free from the tavern owner's grip. However, the tavern owner's control was on the same level as the guards. How could a mere assassin break free? If he hadn't dodged, the bench wouldn't have broken. The tavern owner's smile remained as honest as ever. You're trying to blackmail me. Why didn't you look for him? The assassin shouted as he pointed at Baiming Yoyu. Because he's the city lord's friend. The tavern owner's reply left everyone speechless. You're lying. When the Quanjin players saw the assassin's embarrassment, they could not help but laugh out loud. Damn it, they hadn't expected the system's NPCs to be so interesting. As for Thousand Miles Bloody, his face was flushed red with embarrassment. This bastard had wanted to kill someone in front of Chuanjin to establish his might. He had not expected to make such a blunder. One could imagine how Thousand Miles Bloody was feeling right now. Guiwu, come back. Thousand Miles Bloody ordered the assassin with a dark expression. The assassin helplessly took out a gold coin and stuffed it into the tavern owner's hands before returning to the team. Seeing Thousand Miles Bloody's awkward expression, Wang Yu smiled and said, Quan Zhun is my friend. There are no outsiders here. If you have anything to say, just say it. We still have to go and clear the dungeon. Thousand Miles of Crimson pretended to be calm as he laughed and said, Brother Iron Bull, you really are a straightforward person. Then I'll get straight to the point. Since ancient times, birds of a feather flock together. I feel that with Brother Iron Bull's skills, you should be able to develop better. Those lowly guilds will only hold you back. Damn. Hearing Thousand Miles Bloody's description of Chuanjin, the Quan Zhun players' expressions darkened as they drew their weapons. Damn it, there's so many daring guilds out there. This bastard is the first one to scold the Quanjin sect for being despicable in front of their faces. Seeing the Chuanjin members draw their weapons, the people around the Thousand Miles Crimson also got into position. Despicable? Seeing that the two sides were about to start fighting, Wang Yu looked at the Chuanjin people as if nothing had happened. He couldn't help but laugh and say, This description is quite appropriate. Brother Iron Ox thinks so too. Hearing Wang Yu say this, Thousand Miles Blood thought that Wang Yu and Chuanjin didn't get along well. So he quickly climbed up the ladder and said, A fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. I wonder if Brother Iron Ox is willing to join our blood alliance? There's no need for that. Wang Yu waved his hand lightly. Why? Bloody Thousand Miles frowned. Does Brother Iron Ox look down on our blood alliance? No. Wang Yu shook his head and said, I just look down on you. As he said this, Wang Yu looked around at the Chuanjin people and said, At least this group of despicable people doesn't make me feel disgusted. Even though Wang Yu is usually murderous and merciless, those who knew Wang Yu knew that Wang Yu was quite easygoing and would never hate someone for no reason. However, towards Thousand Miles Blood Crimson in front of him, he was extremely disgusted. Poaching people wasn't rare in the game, but doing it in front of others wasn't as simple as just poaching. It was naked contempt and thinking that he could do whatever he wanted. Everyone said that Chuanjin had low morals and was unreasonable. However, such disrespectful behavior was something that even the despicable people of Chuanjin wouldn't do. He really didn't understand where Thousand Miles Blood Crimson got his confidence to think that he was more attractive than those despicable people. The moment Wang Yu said this, Thousand Miles Blood Crimson exploded. He pointed at Wang Yu, his finger trembling in agitation. From the way Thousand Miles Blood talked and acted, it wasn't hard to tell that he was someone who thought highly of himself. He originally thought that in a big guild like the Blood Alliance, whether it was in terms of power or wealth, they would far surpass the Quanjin sect's small group of 10 or so people. However, who knew that in Wang Yu's eyes, he couldn't even be compared to these despicable people. How could Thousand Miles Blood Crimson endure this? He pointed at Wang Yu and said, Surname Tai. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Do you believe that I won't let you walk out of this door? As he said this, Thousand Miles Blood Crimson waved his hand, and a player behind him opened the door of the tavern. There was a huge crowd outside. It seemed like the tavern had been surrounded by Blood Alliance. Of course, Wang Yu was quite experienced in being surrounded. Blood Alliance was just a small matter. Wang Yu casually glanced outside the door and said, "Oh, do you know who has the final say in Yu Huicheng? Don't tell me it's you?" Thousand Miles Blood Crimson mocked. It was obvious that Thousand Miles Blood Crimson hadn't done his homework. He only knew that Wang Yu was a master blacksmith and that Xuanjin had won the pro league before. As for the rest, he didn't know anything. One couldn't blame Thousand Miles Blood Crimson for being ignorant. This kid had just arrived and his eyes were on his head. In his mind, knowing this was enough. The players from Blood Alliance weren't familiar with Thousand Miles Blood Crimson. Even if they were familiar with him, they wouldn't like his personality. They would hide from him. So who would tell him about Xuanjin? Was it glorious for a guild with tens of thousands of players to be crushed by a dozen players? If it was that easy to say, then Blood Red War Flag wouldn't have been forced into such a state. After all, Thousand Miles Blood Crimson was the boss. Such an embarrassing matter would affect his future, so it was better to keep it a secret. That's right, he has the final say. At this moment, a player behind Thousand Miles Blood Crimson, who knew Xuanjin, carefully said. After saying this, he didn't forget to politely nod towards Wang Yu. His eyes were filled with fear. As the first guild to be targeted by Wang Yu since the start of the game, Blood Alliance's players, especially the older players, had an indescribable fear towards Wang Yu. When they came, Thousand Miles Blood Crimson only told them that he had something to discuss with someone. Although his tone wasn't friendly, this was how big guilds usually talk to people. The players from Blood Alliance didn't question him. However, when they saw that the target of their discussion was Xuanjin's group, they were all shocked. Now that they saw Thousand Miles Blood Crimson provoke the most dangerous person in Yu Huicheng, the players who came with Thousand Miles Blood Crimson even had thoughts of leaving the guild. Chapter 1674. What is the meaning of this? Thousand Miles turned around angrily and stared at the player called Dazed Blood. Are you trying to boost the morale of others and belittle your own? Guild Master Thousand Miles. Seeing that Crimson Thousand Miles was so angry, Crimson Daze did not panic. Instead, he calmly said, "We won't hesitate to fight whoever you want us to. If you really want to cause trouble with us from the Xuanjin sect, then please forgive us for being powerless." Dazed Blood's name was Dazed, but he was not dazed at all. As an old player who had been in Yu Huicheng since the game started, Dazed Blood knew how strong Xuanjin was. This was especially true when Dazed Blood was a Blood Alliance player. He had even worked with Xuanjin before, so he knew how terrifying they were. Originally, Thousand Miles did not have much prestige in Blood Alliance as a guild leader. Now that he was leading Blood Alliance, to provoke such a terrifying opponent, Dazed Blood obviously did not want to die along with Thousand Miles. If he wanted to die, then die by himself. Why did he have to bring a guild member to die? Dazed Blood's pure desire to live was only strong. He did not mean anything else. However, these words were piercing to Thousand Miles' ears. The reason why Thousand Miles wanted to attack Xuanjin, other than to replace Xuanjin's position and rope in Xuanjin's two Grandmaster Blacksmiths, was to establish his dominance in front of the guild players. Of course, Thousand Miles Blood knew that he had suddenly appeared to replace Blood Red War Flag's position. The other Blood Alliance players would definitely be unhappy. If he didn't show some results, he wouldn't be able to convince them. Unfortunately, despite Thousand Miles Crimson's calculations, his subordinates refused to cooperate. Thousand Miles Crimson's pride took a hit as he pointed at Scarlet Daze and bellowed, "Do you think that I, the guild leader, can't control you? Do whatever I tell you to do. If you don't listen, then get the hell out of the guild." Blood Confusion was obviously not someone who was easy to deal with. As a non-core player of Blood Alliance, although Blood Confusion was an elite group, the most he got was better benefits than normal players. He did not get any of the guild's benefits at all. In other words, although Scarlet Daze was a subordinate of Blood Thousand Miles in name, he was not an employee of Blood Thousand Miles. There was a fundamental difference between these two identities. Why does everyone play games? Wasn't it because of the stress in real life? He needed the game world to release his body and mind. If he was still reprimanded by others in this game, wouldn't that be too despicable? In the past, when Blood Red War Flag was still around, no matter how angry he was, he wouldn't look at his subordinates who worked for the guild for free with meager benefits. However, Thousand Miles of Blood had said something like this. It was clear that he hadn't given himself an accurate position. Their former guild leader's sudden departure had already upset Days Scarlet and the other elite players. In addition, Thousand Miles had forced them to provoke Chuanjin's group of villains. Hence, Days Scarlet's mood had worsened. Now that Thousand Miles had displayed such an attitude, Days Scarlet was enraged. If you want to leave, then leave. Do you really think you're the boss? Days Scarlet didn't back down and retorted. He immediately pulled out the control menu and left the guild. Then, he walked out of the tavern without looking back. One should always be afraid of someone taking the lead. The game world was a utopia for most people, and the guild was the spiritual sustenance for these players. Originally, they thought that by escaping from the real world, they would be able to avoid the annoying scheming in real life. However, the changes that had happened to Blood Alliance over the past 2 days were truly disappointing. First, a guild leader had appeared out of nowhere. In less than a day, the old guild leader, Blood Red War Flag, had been forced out. Everyone was an adult, so they naturally saw through the tricks that had been going on. This was why most of the Blood Alliance players were extremely angry. However, what was even more ridiculous was that this retarded guild leader actually dared to provoke Chuanjin. This had definitely crossed everyone's bottom line. Blood Alliance was everyone's blood, sweat, and tears. Everyone had feelings for the guild. Even if the guild leader was an idiot, if no one had left the guild, they might have been able to make do with it. But now that blood-dazed, an elite of the guild had been forced to leave the guild by their guild leader, the others were naturally filled with disappointment. The moment Dazzling left, Blood Alliance was like a dam that had opened up. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people had left the guild. The players that Blood Thousand Miles had brought in all took off their badges and walked out. It was obvious that Thousand Miles of Crimson's attitude had hurt everyone's hearts. Even the ancients would say a few nice words when tricking someone to their death. However, Thousand Miles of Crimson was acting as if it was only natural for him to send someone to their death. I'm not going to serve you anymore. Thousand Miles Crimson was dumbfounded when he saw the notification of him leaving the guild. He had never thought that Bloody Days' departure would cause such a huge reaction. Of course, what Thousand Miles Crimson didn't expect was yet to come. Just as Thousand Miles Crimson didn't know what to do, God Blood Days, who had walked out of the door, shouted, King Thousand Miles Crimson wants us to fight Chuanjin, yet he doesn't care about us. I'm not going to serve you anymore. If you want to be ordered around by him, then you can continue staying. I'm leaving. If Bloody Days didn't shout like that, it would be fine if he was interested. The moment he said that, the Blood Alliance players who were still hesitating on whether or not to leave the guild were confirmed. Another 70 to 80 people left Blood Alliance to be able to be brought by Thousand Miles Crimson to fight Chuanjin. These people were all experts in Blood Alliance. Experts like these would definitely have a few friends in the guild. The moment these people left, even the Blood Alliance players who didn't come to fight Chuanjin all left the guild. Thousand Miles Crimson was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. Seeing so many players leave the guild in the blink of an eye, Thousand Miles Crimson was a little afraid. He couldn't help but turn around and ask, These people are useless. 100,000. What should we do? At this moment, the assassin wearing red leather armor beside Thousand Miles Crimson said, It seems like Blood Alliance really doesn't want to fight with Chuanjin. If we forcefully start a fight with Chuanjin, we will be the ones to suffer. That makes sense. Thousand Miles Crimson nodded his head and then turned around to stare at Chuanjin. Just you wait and see. After saying that, Thousand Miles Crimson led his people out of the tavern without looking back. At the same time, he gave the order to retreat in the guild as expected. After hearing that Thousand Miles Crimson had given up, the wave of Blood Alliance leaving the guild stopped. Chapter 1675. Thousand Miles of Crimson finally understood what was going on. However, the people from the Quan Jun sect were still dumbfounded. They had played the game for so long. If they wanted to target someone, they would stab them in the back. They had never seen anyone yell before. In the eyes of those from the Quan Jun sect, the meaningless provocation of the Thousand Miles of Crimson was no different from a child throwing feces at them. It was extremely childish. This brat had mobilized so many people to do such a thing, and they thought that he would do something big. But in the end, he just scrammed. What the F***CK is this? Mingdu, who had almost been stabbed to death, cursed, "What is Blood Red War Flag trying to do?" "I'm afraid it's not Blood Red War Flag." Wuji shook his head. "We've lost contact with Blood Red War Flag. I'm guessing that they've been exiled to Saga City." Exiled? Wang Yu was confused. Isn't Blood Red War Flag the boss of Blood Alliance? Who dares to exile them? He's the boss, but he's not the boss. Whoever the boss says is the boss. Wuji patiently explained. After all, for the veteran experts of Chuanjin, the unwritten rules of the big guilds were all the same. Blood Alliance obviously had a boss behind the scenes. Then what's the point of being the boss? Wang Yu couldn't help but pout. "Yeah," Wuji said resentfully. "I'm still the boss of Chuanjin. You guys should respect me. Otherwise, what's the point of being the boss? If you call us Grandpa, we'll respect you." Chuanjin's players all pointed their middle fingers at Wuji. Everyone was laughing and talking. Only Mingdu said unhappily, "Are we just going to let this go?" Just now, no one had suffered any losses. Instead, it was Mingdu who had almost been stabbed to death. Mingdu's personality had always been one to take revenge. After suffering such a huge loss, how could he just let it go? "Then what do you want?" Wuji asked back. "No sh**t. Of course, we want to kill them 100 times. Mingdu said. 100 times? Wang Yu frowned when he heard that and said, "I feel that this group of fellows is a little strange. It's not that easy to kill them." It wasn't just Wang Yu. Any normal person could see that Blood Thousand Mile and the others were different, let alone a group of martial arts experts like Wang Yu. Wang Yu was a talented genius. He had been practicing martial arts since he was young and had reached the highest level of martial arts in 20 years. His eyes were very sharp. However, Wang Yu had been practicing martial arts for so many years and had seen many experts in the martial arts circle. However, he had not seen more than 10 people with outstanding reflexes like the blood-colored Thousand Miles. What puzzled Wang Yu even more was that this group of people did not seem to have any martial arts foundation at all. It was obvious that they were innately talented. This was a little shocking. Although Wang Yu was confident that his reflexes weren't any weaker than these people, Wang Yu's reflexes had been trained day and night for more than 20 years. These people had such strong reflexes even though they hadn't practiced martial arts before. It could be seen that their reflexes were much higher than Wang Yu's. With Wang Yu's talent, he could already be considered a rare genius in the Kung Fu circle. Now that he was even more talented than Wang Yu, one could imagine how terrifying he was. Moreover, there were so many of them at once. Could it be that there were so many talented people in this world? Wang Yu was now a grandmaster. His mind was already detached from worldly affairs. However, even so, Wang Yu was still a genius. Suddenly seeing 2 people who were more talented than him, he still felt a little disappointed. Weird. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone felt a little surprised. Of course, it wasn't because the Thousand Miles Crimson was weird. After all, anyone with a discerning eye could see that there was something wrong with this group of people. The reason why they were surprised was because even Wang Yu felt that they were weird. In the eyes of most people, Wang Yu was the weirdest one. If even he said that the other party was weird, it could be seen how weird they were. "How are they compared to you?" Wuji asked Wang Yu in surprise. "In some aspects, they are much better than me." Wang Yu was an honest person. He told everyone his opinion in detail. "Old Wang, you are exaggerating." Hearing Wang Yu's words, Yang Na's face turned pale. The others didn't know, but in Yang Na's eyes, Wang Yu was like a god. After all, Wang Yu's title as the #1 genius since ancient times was publicly recognized in the circle. Hearing that there was someone who was more talented than Wang Yu, Yang Na's face was full of disbelief. "I'm not exaggerating. Wang Yu said calmly. Everyone saw the skills of the assassin just now. If it wasn't for the tavern owner, Mingdu would be a dead man now. Stop it! Stop it! Mingdu waved his hand. After being scared by Wang Yu, Mingdu was still scared. Speaking of the tavern owner, Wang Yu suddenly raised his head and asked curiously, Boss, are you an AI? Huh? Being asked by Wang Yu, the tavern owner laughed and said, You saw through me. You made it so obvious. How could we not see through you? Wang Yu was speechless. Indeed, the tavern owner's behavior just now was definitely not something a non-intelligent NPC could do. So, you are an intelligent NPC. Hearing the tavern owner's words, to place one's pride said in surprise, Then why didn't you come out and do something to the people in the tavern just now? The customers are God. The battle of the gods isn't something mortals can interfere with, the tavern owner said with a smile. Hearing that, everyone was speechless. They didn't expect the tavern owner to be so good at bluffing. To place one's pride asked curiously, What if that kid doesn't pay? The tavern owner smiled faintly and said, Have you heard of Ragnarok? The tavern owner's smile was still charmingly naive, but this smile sent a chill down the Chuanjian dog's spine. They gave him a thumbs up and exclaimed, Awesome, awesome. Society, society. Just as the Chuanjian dogs were teasing the tavern owner, Wuji, who had been deep in thought, suddenly interrupted, Old cow, did you just say that those people don't have any martial arts foundation? That's right, Wang Yu said with certainty. If my judgment is wrong, then these people are definitely not people you can afford to offend. Then, what are the chances of a person's reflexes reaching their level without training? Wuji asked again. I'm not sure. No one can say for sure when it comes to talent. Wang Yu didn't dare to be too confident. The world was big, and there were all kinds of strange things. What if they were really geniuses? How many people are as talented as you? Wuji asked after thinking for a while. They all say that it's a rare encounter. After seeing the blood-colored miles and the others, Wang Yu felt a little guilty. Chapter 1676. Suspicious? What do you mean? Wang Yu asked, puzzled. Obviously, although Wang Yu was smart, he had been practicing martial arts since he was young. His knowledge was far less than Wuji's. Therefore, Wang Yu naively thought that the Crimson Mile and the assassin were talented people. Hearing Wuji's words, Wang Yu found it hard to understand. Wuji said confidently, I suspect that they are using cheats. Cheats? That can't be. Chunxiang came over and rubbed his chin. Rebirth is a game that strictly controls cheats. If they are, how could the system not detect it? Chunxiang's words were not false. Cheats have been a cancer in esports since ancient times. This kind of cheating method had ruined many good games. When Longting Company developed Rebirth, they also realized this. Therefore, they added anti-cheating programs to every port of the game equipment. Once an illegal program connected to the port and changed the data, the program on the game equipment would immediately send feedback to the game's detection center. They were shocked to find out that it was a permanent ban. Rebirth's account was bound to the user's identity. Each player could only apply for one account, unlike other online games where one could apply for another account after being banned. This was equivalent to depriving players of the right to play the game. The consequences of cheating were severe. It was because of this severe crackdown that Rebirth eliminated cheats. Ever since the game was launched, no one had ever dared to challenge the system's detection. After all, players who intended to cheat liked this game. Depriving them of the right to play the game was undoubtedly the heaviest punishment. Therefore, when Wuji said the word cheats, everyone thought it was unbelievable. If he really did cheat, the Crimson Mile would not be standing in front of everyone. That depends on how you compare it. Wuji shook his head. There is a certain probability of a bug in the program. This probability is much higher than the probability of two incredible experts appearing at once. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Chun Xiang laughed. When we first met Old Cow, didn't we also think that he was cheating? If we all had the same mentality as you, the first one to be crippled would be Old Cow. That's different. Wuji rejected the idea. Old Cow is skilled because he has been practicing this since he was young, so he has accumulated experience. However, The two of them have no martial arts foundation, yet they are so skilled. If that's not cheating, then what is it? But the game has real-time surveillance. Chun Xiang retorted. Even if their port doesn't respond, it's impossible for the server to not respond when they walk on the street. That's why I thought it was strange. These two guys must have gotten their hands on a program that can bypass the game's anti-cheating detection. Wuji mumbled again. Impossible. At this moment, Bao San said, the game port's program is double encrypted. Even if someone tries to crack it, they'll be banned by the system, let alone cracked. That's strange, Wuji said. How did the two of them do it? Maybe they didn't even use the program you're talking about? Seeing the three scientists discussing seriously, Wang Yu whispered. Hearing Wang Yu's words, the three of them were stunned, and their eyes fell on Wang Yu at the same time. After being stunned for a full 3 seconds, the three of them mocked. The idea that Old Cow suggested is quite interesting, but it won't work. How can they cheat without a program? No, you don't understand what I mean. Wang Yu explained. What I mean is, maybe the person who cheats is a cheat himself. A cheat himself? Like you? Wuji curled his lips. Didn't you just say that those two don't have martial arts foundation? It doesn't have to be martial arts. Wang Yu scratched the back of his head and said, is there something that can directly improve a person's body function? Stimulant? As soon as Wang Yu finished speaking, Yin Lao Air blurted out. Yes. That's it. Wang Yu nodded. What if they took stimulants? We can't rule out that possibility. Wuji frowned and said, but stimulants can only stimulate the human body's potential for a short period of time. The effect can't be that obvious. People at Wuji's level were naturally familiar with stimulants. Most people who play games for a long time were otakus. Their body functions were weaker than ordinary people. Stimulants could only improve nerve activity and stimulate the human body's potential. No matter how strong a stimulant was, it was impossible to turn otakus into superhumans like Wang Yu. Otherwise, would it still be called a stimulant? It was called Popeye's spinach. That's roughly what I mean. Wang Yu said, I didn't say that it has to be a stimulant. What if it's some high-tech method? Wang Yu had always been in awe of high-tech. Since ancient times, other than technology, there was nothing that could force a killing technique like martial arts to such a state. In Wang Yu's eyes, if researchers could create something as destructive as nuclear weapons, it should not be difficult to improve the human body's function to the level of martial arts practitioners. High-tech method? The speaker did not mean it, but the listener did. Wang Yu only said it casually, but Wuji's expression changed slightly. He said in surprise, could it be? What? Seeing Wuji's expression, everyone asked curiously, do you know what it is? That can't be. However, faced with everyone's doubts, Wuji did not answer. Instead, he said to himself, isn't that thing still in the experimental stage? Isn't he afraid of killing people by taking it out just like that? What is it? Everyone felt strange when Wuji did not say anything. A chip that is similar to a stimulant, but 100 times stronger than it. Wuji said with a serious expression, our country doesn't have such a thing yet. I only heard that country A is developing it, and it can be used in the military in the future, but it is said that it is still in the experimental stage. How do they get it? What can't you buy with money? Bao San snorted and said, maybe this kid bought on the black market. He was probably tricked. Tisk. After Bao San's analysis, everyone could not help but sigh. If that's really the case, this kid is really unlucky. Who cares if he's unlucky or not? Seeing that everyone was starting to sympathize with the 1,000-Mile Crimson, Mingdu said unhappily, I just want to kill him a few times to vent my anger. Chapter 1677. F***CK. I was just saying. Hearing Wuji say that, Mingdu broke out in cold sweat. The expressions of the other Chuanjin members changed too. 1,000 Miles of Blood was different from the opponents they had faced before. No matter how strong the other opponents were, they were still normal people. But what was 1,000 Miles of Blood? Cheats. Being an opponent of this kind of person was a disgrace. Good Shoes did not step on dog sh*t. Even Chuanjin, who were often treated as dog sh*t by others, did not want to be an opponent of this kind of person. After all, playing chess with a bad person would only get worse. The easiest way to deal with cheats was to not bring them along. I know, Wu Ji said calmly, but they won't joke around with you. Then we can't just go offline to hide from this bunch of trash, right? Mingdu asked hesitantly. Hiding from a strong opponent and going offline wasn't embarrassing, but being chased by a bunch of trash with cheats was a little frustrating. No, Wu Ji smiled. We could do dungeons. No matter how strong his cheat is, he can't chase us into dungeons to find us, right? That makes sense. The others all agreed. After a round of discussion, Xuanjin made the decision to stay away from Thousand Miles of Blood. They had no choice. Blood Alliance didn't want to offend Xuanjin, and Xuanjin didn't want to offend the current Blood Alliance. Even though Xuanjin had always been recognized as the #1 guild in Yuhui-Cheng, that was mostly because Blood Alliance didn't want to go against Xuanjin. Xuanjin's people were all skilled, especially Wang Yu, who was so overpowered. What good would it do to go against Xuanjin? In the game, it was impossible to completely wipe out a person. The Quanjin sect was only a small guild of a dozen or so people. There wasn't much profit to be made from them. If he really angered them, they would come out every day to cause trouble for him. Wouldn't that be even more disgusting? So, going against them was not worth it. Instead, it would only make things difficult for him. On the contrary, roping them in was equivalent to having a group of strong helpers. After being the guild leader for so many years, Blood Red Warflag was naturally much more shrewd than a young man like Thousand Miles Crimson. Back then, Blood Red Warflag had realized this, which was why they had gotten closer to the Quanjin sect. The people from the Quanjin sect might not be as smart as Wu Ji, but they all knew their own limits. Of course, they also knew what Blood Red Warflag was planning. If the Blood Alliance really wanted to fight to the death with the Quanjin sect, it would be difficult for the Quanjin sect to withstand such a huge difference in numbers. Otherwise, the Quanjin sect wouldn't have urged the Blood Alliance to attack when they were dealing with sword pointing towards the heavens. At the end of the day, the Quanjin sect walked the path of elites, but the Blood Alliance also had many experts. This was especially so after they signed the Underworld Kings group. In terms of elite experts, apart from Wang Yu, no one dared to say that they didn't care about the Blood Alliance. What's more, there are now a few experts that even Wang Yu felt were strange. Right now, Xuanjin was still a threat to Blood Alliance. However, once they were killed by Thousand Miles of Blood, the terrifying image of Xuanjin in the hearts of Blood Alliance players would change. After realizing that Xuanjin's people could be killed, Blood Alliance players naturally wouldn't be afraid of Xuanjin anymore. Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance didn't have the intelligence to manage a guild like Blood Red Warflag. This kid was eager to show off, and when the time came, he might start a rebellion. All in all, fighting to the death with Thousand Miles of Blood wouldn't benefit either the Quanjin sect or the Blood Alliance. On the contrary, the other guilds would see the commotion, and there might even be people who would take advantage of the situation. Were these people from Xuanjin the kind of people who would do anything for others? Definitely not. Moreover, the S-Rank Pro League was right around the corner. There was no harm in going into seclusion for a while. While Xuanjin decided to be a coward, Blood Alliance wanted to teach Xuanjin a lesson. However, if their players didn't cooperate, there was nothing Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance could do. At this moment, within Blood Alliance's office, Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance was furious. Motherf Asterisker, what kind of trash are you? If you can't even deal with a mere Xuanjin, what kind of future do you have? Within the office, there were many old friends of Blood Red Warflag, such as Blood Shura and Bloodwind Whisperer. After being scolded by the Thousand Miles Crimson, the group's faces darkened. Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance didn't know how strong Xuanjin was, but they had personally experienced it. However, not daring to make a move in front of so many people and even leaving the guild was quite embarrassing. Of course, Blood Shura and the others didn't dare to retort. They were the beneficiaries of the guild. Even if Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance slapped them in the face, they had to endure it. Boss, there's no point in forcing us. Just as Crimson Thousand Miles was venting his anger on everyone, the guy called Extreme Urgency stood up and said, there must be a reason why everyone is unwilling to go against the Quanjin sect. Forcing them will only produce the opposite of the desired result. Actually, there was no need for extreme urgency to say such nonsense. Blood Alliance had already left the guild, and the opposite effect was still in progress. Thousand Miles Crimson wasn't an idiot. He had seen everything that had happened today. Even now, he still felt a lingering fear. Even though he knew that Crimson Azura and the others wouldn't dare to leave the guild like the other players, Thousand Miles Crimson had only offended them. After hearing Extreme Urgency's words, Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance also calmed down. He sighed and said in a calm tone, "Sigh, I'm not angry at my brothers. I'm angry that our guild has no backbone. I really don't know how Blood Red War Flag managed to lead the guild. Did you see that? This was the face of the guild leader. His words were so harsh, and he casually dragged Blood Red War Flag into it. Boss, seeing that Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance was about to spout nonsense and attack Blood Red War Flag, Bloodwind Whisper hurriedly interrupted. Can I say something? Wind Whisper, right? Speak. Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance looked at Bloodwind Whisper and spread his hands, indicating for Bloodwind Whisper to continue. What benefits do we get from going against Xuanjin? Bloodwind Whisper asked curiously. Benefits? Crimson Whisper's question stumped Crimson Miles. After a moment of thought, Crimson Miles said, They're such a small guild, yet they have 2 Grandmaster Blacksmiths. I can't take it anymore. Oh. Bloodwind Whisper raised his eyebrows and asked, Are you sure that if we beat up Xuanjin, those 2 blacksmiths will come to Blood Alliance? This Thousand Miles of Blood Alliance was speechless again. Chapter 1678. Seeing that Thousand Miles was speechless, Bloody Wind Whisper continued, Since there are no benefits to be had, why should we offend Xuanjin? Bloody Wind Whisper had always maintained a peaceful attitude toward Xuanjin. Back then, it was Bloody Wind Whisper who had warned Blood Red War Flag not to continue fighting with Xuanjin. Blood Red War Flag had listened to Bloody Wind Whisper's advice, which was why they had been able to develop Blood Alliance in the shortest amount of time possible. Now, Bloody Wind Whisper's attitude toward Xuanjin had not changed. After all, the more time it spent with Xuanjin, the more Bloody Wind Whisper understood how powerful this group was. Until there was no absolute power that could crush Xuanjin, Bloody Wind Whisper's attitude toward Xuanjin would not change in the slightest. Although Crimson Thousand Miles was a guild leader who had appeared out of nowhere, Crimson Wind Whisper was a smart person. He knew better than anyone that a new leader would have his own subordinates. Moreover, Crimson Thousand Miles was the young master of the Blood Alliance. Therefore, Crimson Wind Whisper did not want to watch the situation develop in a bad direction. If Crimson Thousand Miles listened to him, Crimson Wind Whisper would definitely help Crimson Thousand Miles along with Blood Red War Flag. If Crimson Thousand Miles did not take him seriously, Crimson Wind Whisper would be happy to be a spectator. It was obvious that Thousand Miles was not the type to listen to others' advice. Seeing Bloody Wind Whisper and Blood Red War Flag being so wishy-washy, Thousand Miles felt disgusted. This is not a matter of benefits. Thousand Miles thought for a moment and said, Yu Huichun will not allow any guild to surpass Blood Alliance. Do you understand? Understood. Seeing Thousand Miles' attitude, Bloody Wind Whisper could only shake its head helplessly and fall silent. Blood Wind Whisper's silence made Blood Thousand Miles even more depressed. He pointed at Blood Wind Whisper and the others and said unhappily, You are all senior members of Blood Alliance. Don't you have anything to say? This, to move unhindered, Bloody Wind Whisperer said helplessly, We're not some workshop guild, and our brothers haven't sold themselves to us. What can we do? If we really push them too far, we'll be the direct victims. You're the boss, so it's up to you to put pressure on our brothers, but we can't guarantee the results. You. Bloody Thousand Miles was infuriated by Bloody Wind Whisper's words. However, after giving it some thought, he realized that although Bloody Wind Whisper's words were unpleasant, they were the truth. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. The reason why Blood Alliance was where it was today was because of the hard work of these players. If they angered these people, Blood Alliance wouldn't be far from being finished. However, Thousand Miles of Blood was in a hurry to establish its might in front of these guild members. It also wanted to suppress Qiuanjin's momentum. Not only were his subordinates uncooperative, but they were also acting as if they were saying, "If you dare provoke Qiuanjin, I'll leave the guild." Any guild leader would be bitterly disappointed. F***CK, were these players from the Quanjun sect or the Blood Alliance? As the leader of a guild, it was impossible for him to ignore the thoughts of the guild players. However, if he had to worry about the thoughts of his subordinates, Thousand Miles of Blood was in a difficult position. After all, Thousand Miles of Blood had already boasted about it. If he gave up halfway, he would be putting himself in a difficult position. If he didn't do his first job well, how was he going to survive in the guild in the future? He didn't have much influence in the first place. If he made a fool of himself, wouldn't he be treated as a joke? Thousand Miles of Blood was a person who cared about his reputation. Of course, he wouldn't allow such a thing to happen to him. For a moment, Thousand Miles of Blood was in a dilemma. "Boss, I have an idea." Just as Crimson Miles was at a loss as to what to do, one of the girls beside him suddenly stood up. The girl wore a blue robe and had a bandage wrapped around her arm. Her class was a Qi Master, which was rarely seen in the game. Her looks didn't need to be mentioned. There was no female player in the game that was ugly. Above the girl's head was her ID, Water Dripping Stone. "Water Droplet, what idea do you have?" Thousand Miles of Blood asked in surprise. "It's simple," Water Dripping Stone said. "Since no one wants to provoke Qiuanjin, let's not tell them." "Not tell them?" Hearing this, Thousand Miles Crimson frowned and said, "Big sis, do you know who these people from the Quanjin sect are? They're a team that won the Pro League. How are we supposed to deal with them?" Although Thousand Miles of Blood was courting death, he was still quite cautious. After all, a person's reputation was like a tree shadow. No matter how arrogant Thousand Miles of Blood was, he didn't dare to underestimate Qiuanjin. At the very least, he wasn't confident that he could provoke Qiuanjin with these people. Pro League? However, when they heard Thousand Miles of Blood's words, Water Dripping Stone and the others didn't feel any pressure. Instead, looks of disdain appeared on their faces. This was especially true for the fatty in black sitting in the corner. He laughed and said, "It's just SOSO. Fatty is right." The assassin, dancing ghost Withered Vine, who had fought Quanjin's team before, echoed, "If it weren't for the NPC messing around in the tavern just now, I would have killed that ugly freak long ago. How can this be the champion team of the Pro League? Our local pro teams are really weak." "Dancing Ghost, you're wrong." Hearing Dancing Ghost Withered Vine's words, Golden Light said shamelessly, "It's not that the professional team is weak, it's that we're too strong, right?" The others also shamelessly boasted, "It's because we're too strong." Damn. Looking at these ** stars flattering each other, Bloody Wind Whisperer and the others were so disgusted that they almost vomited the food they had last night. Damn it, a bunch of scientists are bragging about how powerful they are. Do they have any shame? Blood Azura couldn't help but say, "Don't look down on Qiuanjin. They're really strong." "Strong?" Golden Light said disdainfully, "That's for you guys. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. It's because of trash like you guys that Blood Alliance is so useless." "You dare to call me trash?" Blood Azura was very hot-tempered. Being mocked by Golden Light, he slammed the table and stood up. No, no, no. Golden Light suddenly appeared. He waved his hand and pointed at Bloody Shura, Bloody Wind Whisperer, and the others. "I'm saying that all of you are trash. Damn, I won't stoop to your level." Chapter 1679. All right, cut the crap. Seeing that they were about to start arguing with each other, Thousand Miles Crimson hurriedly interrupted. "I'm not doubting everyone's strength, but Qiuanjin has always been treacherous. Without the help of the other brothers in the guild, who can possibly catch them?" Thousand Miles of Blood was right. Chasing and killing were different from direct competition. You couldn't win just because you could. Even in the real world, it would require 3 times the manpower to ensure the completion of the mission, let alone in the game. In the game, players had countless escape methods. Even if they couldn't escape, they could still forcefully log out of the game. Golden Light 1,000 Miles of Crimson and a few others only had 6 people. Wasn't it ridiculous for them to hunt down more than 10 people from the Quanjin sect? Don't worry. As long as one person in Chuanjin is killed, the rest will be easy, right? Oh, 1,000 Miles Crimson asked in confusion. Why do you say that? Because as long as the Chuanjin's people die, the fear will disappear. The reason why the others in the guild don't provoke Chuanjin is not because they don't want to, but because they don't dare to. They think that Chuanjin is invincible. So if we use our actions to break this conclusion, the other players in the guild will have a new understanding of Chuanjin. Wuji was always able to see through the overall situation. It was not because the author had cheated him, but because he had the most important advantage of a strategic situation. No matter how smart he was, he would never treat his opponents as fools. As expected, as long as the Blood Alliance people used their brains, they would be able to figure out the crux of the matter. This was the reason why Chuanjin didn't want to fight Blood Alliance head-on. There was a saying in the art of war, show strength to get peace, show weakness to get war. The reason why Chuanjin was able to shock Blood Alliance was because of the aura they had created. The players all had their own plans and would help whoever could win. As long as the atmosphere that Chuanjin had created was broken, the Blood Alliance players who didn't dare to make any rash moves would definitely become excited. At that time, no matter how powerful Chuanjin was, they wouldn't have much of a chance of winning against tens of thousands of people. At most, they would be able to retreat unscathed. However, doing so would play right into 1,000 Mile Blood's hands. Didn't 1,000 Mile Blood dare to declare war on Chuanjin to chase Chuanjin out of Yuhuicheng? You're right. Hearing this explanation, 1,000 Miles of Crimson suddenly saw the light and happily said, "Then who should we start with?" "I'm a warrior." The water droplets pierced through the stone. Archers were too fast, assassins could turn invisible, and mages had a lot of skills. Priests weren't intimidating enough, and warriors were always the primary targets of pursuit. This was especially true for shield warriors, who didn't have much destructive power and were extremely easy to kill. All right, let's start with that Lao air. 1,000 Miles Crimson nodded and said, "Golden light. Open your eyes and see where Lao air is." And after receiving 1,000 Miles Crimson's instructions, Golden Light immediately activated his clairvoyant skill. After a while, Golden Light said in a daze, "That kid is at the Scarlet Church, in a dungeon." 1,000 Miles Crimson frowned and said, "Let's check 3 Bao. 3 Bao is also at the Scarlet Church." Golden Light said, "Should we check the others?" "There's no need to check." 1,000 Miles Crimson said confidently, "These guys are definitely running dungeons together. Let's wait for a while. This kind of low-level dungeon won't take long to finish. Let's go to the entrance of the Scarlet Church and wait." 10 minutes later, 1,000 Miles Crimson's group arrived at the entrance of the Scarlet Church. As it was a low-level dungeon, there weren't many teams in front of the Scarlet Church. There were only 4 or 5 teams. 1,000 Miles Crimson and his group observed the surrounding terrain and found an inconspicuous place to pretend to be leveling. However, 1,000 Miles Crimson and his group waited for more than an hour, but Chuanjin's group didn't show up. 1,000 Miles Crimson and his group started to get impatient. "Old Gold, did you check correctly? Is it Yuhuicheng's Scarlet Church?" 1,000 Miles Crimson frowned and asked. "That's right." Golden Light suddenly looked at the search record and said, "It's Yuhuicheng." "Then why aren't they out yet? Are they going to spend the night inside?" 1,000 Miles Crimson asked unhappily. The Scarlet Church was the first dungeon in Rebirth, so it wasn't difficult to begin with. Everyone knew how to clear it. Under normal circumstances, even if it was hell mode, it wouldn't take too long. It had been almost an hour, but Chuanjin's people still hadn't come out. This was too strange. "Let me check again." Saying this, Golden Light suddenly opened his eyes to check again. The result was the same as before. Lao air was still in the Scarlet Church. F***CK. What's wrong with these guys? Looking at the search results, Golden Light suddenly and the others were dumbfounded. It was just a Scarlet Church. Even a normal team would be able to clear it in an hour. Chuanjin was the champion of the professional league. Why would they stay inside for so long? Could it be that they know we're waiting for them? Dancing Ghost Withered Vine touched his chin and said, "How would they know?" Thousand Miles Crimson asked in confusion, "Why wouldn't they know?" Dancing Ghost Withered Vine laughed coldly and said, "When we decided to chase after Chuanjin, it wasn't like there was no one around." Hearing Dancing Ghost Withered Vine's words, Thousand Miles Crimson's expression changed. That's right. When we were discussing, just now, Bloody Wind Whisperer and the others were there too. These guys were old subordinates of Blood Red War Flag, and they had a good relationship with Chuanjin. It wasn't strange for them to inform Chuanjin at this time. Thinking about this, Thousand Miles Crimson was furious. F***CK. When I get back, I'll teach these traitors a lesson. Who? Dancing Ghost Withered Vine asked, even though he already knew the answer. This guy was really cunning. He didn't mention any names, but with just one sentence, he led Thousand Miles Crimson's line of thought to Bloody Wind Whisperer and the others. At this time, he was still pretending to be innocent. It must be Bloody Wind Whisperer. Thousand Miles Crimson said, "I've always disliked that guy. Not only is he trying to protect Chuanjin, but he's also always making sarcastic remarks. Other than him, no one else will inform Chuanjin's people." "Then what do we do now?" Golden Light suddenly said anxiously, "If Chuanjin's people hide inside and don't come out, are we just going to wait here?" "There's no need." Water Dripping Stone waved his hand and said, "The monk can run, but the temple can't. If they don't come out, we can find someone else." "No way. You want to attack Chuanjin's base?" Thousand Miles Crimson said, "With just the 6 of us, attacking Chuanjin's base? Aren't we just looking to die?" Base battles mainly relied on manpower. If they fought against Chuanjin head-on, Blood Alliance definitely wouldn't go against Chuanjin. If they attacked another guild's base with just the 6 of them, if Chuanjin's people came back, Blood Alliance would probably have to pay. After all, the punishment for a base battle was two-way. Chapter 1680. Family? What do you mean? Crimson Mile was stunned. "As far as I know, there are more people in Chuanjin," Water Dripping Stone said. "I heard that the wife of the blacksmith called Iron Ox runs a grocery store in Yuhuicheng." At this point, Water Dripping Stone looked around and said, "A person who runs a store often isn't very strong. Do you think he'll just sit back and do nothing if we target his wife?" This isn't a good idea," Crimson Mile said with some difficulty. "Family shouldn't be involved." That's right. The others all agreed. Wouldn't it be too much if we did this? It had to be said that although Crimson Mile and the others were ambitious, cunning, and did not follow the rules, they still had a bottom line. Too much. However, after hearing Crimson Mile and the others' words, Water Dripping Stone mocked them with disdain. "This is a game, okay? We're just trying to force the people from Chuanjin out. It's not like we'll lose anything in real life." Crimson Mile was still hesitant. Water Dripping Stone was obviously a girl with a temper. Seeing Crimson Mile's hesitation, she said unhappily, "Anyway, I've already thought of a way. If you don't want to do this, you can sit here and wait. I can't guarantee when they'll come out." Crimson Mile and the others were still hesitant, but after Water Dripping Stone said that, they were all speechless. Compared to waiting here to die, it wasn't unreasonable to say that constant dripping could wear through a stone. "Okay, we'll do as you say." After thinking about it, Crimson Mile gritted his teeth and made his decision. At the same time, inside the Scarlet Church, Chuanjin and the others were sitting on the floor of the church's main hall. They surrounded a bonfire and watched Wuji sit there and roast meat. Under the roasting of the fire, the meat in Wuji's hands sizzled with oil, and the smell of meat wafted through the air. Everyone couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. "Give it to me, give it to me," Mingdu shouted as he rushed forward to snatch the meat. "Pah!" Wuji slapped Mingdu's claw aside, and then respectfully handed the meat to Wang Yu. "Huh, I'm the first." Wang Yu was a little surprised. According to Wuji's character, he would definitely be the first to eat the roasted meat. How could he be so noble and give the first piece of meat to me? "Eat it." Wuji smiled and handed the meat to Wang Yu. The expression on his face was like that of a virtuous wife. Seeing how enthusiastic Wuji was, Wang Yu no longer doubted him. As a result, He took a big bite of the roasted meat and said, "Wuji's cooking is getting better and better." "Not at all. As long as you're satisfied." "Nyogo," Wuji said flatteringly. "Holy shit. Old dog Wuji is acting a little strange today." Seeing the usually audacious Wuji being so docile in front of Wang Yu, the others in Xuanjin also felt that something was wrong. Did I do something wrong to Uncle Nyo? To place one's pride, rubbed his chin as he thought. Don't talk nonsense. Bao San hurriedly covered to place one's pride's mouth when he heard that. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want, especially in front of Wang Yu. That could cost you your life. Then, Bao San changed the topic. How much longer do we have to wait here? We'll just have to wait. Wuji skewered a new piece of meat and placed it over the fire. He slowly said, "Those people from 1,000 miles of Crimson came prepared. They're definitely waiting for us to ambush us. Who knows? They might even be outside right now. While they're starving outside, we can eat roasted meat inside. Isn't that great? But we can't continue like this." Chun Xiang interrupted. "Are we going to keep waiting like this?" "That's not necessary." Wuji smiled. 1,000 miles is different from Blood Red War Flag. This guy can't tolerate people, so he won't be able to do anything big. If we don't go out, he will definitely suspect that someone from Blood Alliance gave us information. Who do you think he will suspect? Blood Wind Whisper? Chun Xiang asked after thinking for a while. 1,000 miles was a very arrogant brat. Of course, he wouldn't discuss problems with normal Blood Alliance players. Those who could get along well with 1,000 miles were definitely core Blood Alliance players in the past. Among them, Bloodwind Whisper was definitely the most scheming one. That's right. Wuji flipped the meat in his hand and said, "Once Blood 1,000 miles suspects Bloodwind Whisper, the Blood Alliance will definitely fall into chaos. All we need to do is eat and drink here, and we can watch them fight amongst themselves. Why not?" See, hearing Wuji's words, Chun Xiang couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Wuji's tactic of watching from the sidelines without doing anything was truly sinister. That's right, Bloodwind Whisper was someone with brains. Without Blood Red War Flag, Blood Alliance's core would definitely be Bloodwind Whisper. As long as 1,000 miles suspected Bloodwind Whisper, they would definitely offend Blood Alliance's core members. At that time, the upper echelons of Blood Alliance would be divided. As for the players below them, they wouldn't be able to command them. What the F***CK? This was killing without a trace. Right now, even 1,000 miles can't command Blood Alliance. What's the point of Rational Taboo doing this? Hee hee. Wuji laughed. Just because they don't listen doesn't mean they can't command them. Blood Alliance's players just don't want to listen to 1,000 miles' commands. If 1,000 miles has a good relationship with Blood Red War Flag, of course, they wouldn't just watch as 1,000 miles gets killed. Kill. Wang Yu's face was filled with confusion. Do we have to fight back? That's right, Wuji said calmly. These people's actions are all within my grasp. Very soon, they'll be in trouble. Trouble? Wang Yu's face was still filled with confusion. Xuanjin and the others didn't understand either. They didn't know what kind of abilities Yu Huicheng had. For someone like 1,000 miles to be in trouble, Wuji kept them in suspense and didn't want to reveal anything. Chun Xiang thought for a moment, and his expression changed. He first looked at Wang Yu and then pointed at Wuji in shock. "You, sooner or later, you'll play yourself to death." "What does it have to do with me?" Wuji said unhappily. 1,000 miles doesn't listen to my commands. This is the path they chose. I just added fuel to the fire. Hey, what do you mean? After hearing what Chun Xiang said, Wang Yu didn't feel confident anymore. He seemed to have thought of something and asked. Chun Xiang said, 1,000 miles is waiting for us here. Will we just wait here? Definitely not. Wang Yu shook his head. If it was you, how would you lure us out? Chun Xiang asked again. I won't give him a chance. Wang Yu said arrogantly. Chun Xiang was speechless. Chapter 1681. That's right. Spring said, although Mingdu's brain isn't normal, his reaction in this area is still very normal. Not bad. Wang Yu rejoiced. Our Xuanjin doesn't have many people, and everyone is hiding in the guild encampment, so there's no one for them to kill. Yes. Spring said so. They have to find people related to us, and not in the guild encampment, such as our friends and family. Family. As soon as Spring said this, Wang Yu's heart suddenly trembled. Xuanzhen's people could be said to be very aloof. Apart from Xuanzhen's people, they didn't have any friends at all. Moreover, this group of people had boasted to each other a long time ago, and even glorified it by saying that beasts were all solitary. As for his family, according to what Wang Yu knew, other than Wu Ji and his brother, he was the only one from the Xuanzhen sect who had a family in the game. Furthermore, his father, brothers, and wife were all in the game. If the Blood Red Miles' group went to find Old Wang and evildoers run wild, Wang Yu naturally wasn't afraid. After all, these two people were basically invincible, apart from Wang Yu himself, and the other was the leader of the world's #1 guild. Provoking them was equivalent to courting death. However, Mu Zixian was only a woman, and her strength was the complete opposite of Wang Yu's. If the Blood Red Miles' group really went to find Mu Zixian would definitely be at a disadvantage. Wu Ji, old dog. Mu Zixian was definitely the most important person to Wang Yu. Thinking of this, even though Wang Yu was a martial arts grandmaster, he couldn't help but be shocked and angry at this moment. His hair stood up, and his eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Wu Ji. Super Scion. This was the first time Xuanzhen's group saw such an expression on Wang Yu's face. Everyone was shocked, and they all stood up and took a few steps back. Wu Ji was also shocked to the point that he broke out in cold sweat. He hurriedly explained, Brother Nyo, don't be angry. This is definitely not my plan. Didn't I just treat you to meet? Then why did you hide it from me? Wang Yu said angrily. Wang Yu was also a person who could distinguish right from wrong, and he naturally knew that this had nothing to do with Wu Ji. After all, Wu Ji was only hiding it. The reason why Wang Yu was angry was because Wu Ji had clearly thought of this, but didn't tell him. I'm doing this for your own good, Wu Ji hurriedly said. If I told you beforehand, you definitely wouldn't have stayed here. Nonsense, Wang Yu said angrily. If you had told me earlier, I would have already reached you, Huicheng. That's right, Wu Ji said again. If you didn't hide in the dungeon, you would definitely have a head-on conflict with Blood Crimson's group. When that time comes, we will also help. Why would Blood Crimson suspect Blood Whisper? If Blood Crimson Wind Whisper and Blood Crimson Thousand Miles are of the same mind, and he really leads Blood Alliance to rebel, can a few of us fight against tens of thousands of people from Blood Alliance? Evildoers Run Wild has just recovered. You can't be thinking of asking him help again, right? Wu Ji really had a glib tongue, and his words made Wang Yu speechless. Indeed, no matter how strong Wang Yu was, he couldn't fight tens of thousands of people alone. Even if Blood Alliance couldn't kill him, if they really rebelled, Wang Yu would be helpless. No one could do anything to the other, and the result was the scariest. Once it happened, it would be a war with no time limit. Especially the last point that Wu Ji said, it directly poked Wang Yu's weak spot. Evildoers Run Wild was strong, but to move unhindered he had just caused a ruckus and couldn't even take care of himself. So how could he care about others? Furthermore, as an elder brother, Wang Yu's pride was still very strong. It was only right and proper for an elder brother to help his younger brother fight. However, if the younger brother helped his elder brother to vent his anger, wouldn't that be slapping his own face? Wang Yu was a respectable person. If it wasn't necessary, he naturally wouldn't ask Evildoers Run Wild for help. Wang Yu thought for a moment and said, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. I'll deal with you after I'm done with Blood Crimson Miles. With that, Wang Yu directly left the dungeon, spread his wings, and flew straight to Yu Huicheng. At that moment, Yu Huicheng was as calm as ever. In a small alley in the south of the city, Mu Zixian was open for business as usual, and the small grocery store was still very busy. Blood Crimson Miles and his group also arrived in front of the grocery store, according to Xuanzhen's information. Looking at Mu Zixian, who was busy in the store, Blood Crimson Miles observed for a moment and asked Dripping Stone, Is this Iron Ox's wife? That's right. Dripping Stone said with certainty, It's her. I'll go and kill her right now. F***CK. How could he lay his hands on such a beautiful girl? Why should a woman make things difficult for another woman? Blood Crimson Miles and his group all broke out in cold sweat. There were very few female players in the game, and it was the instinct of all male players to be protective of the fairer sex. Moreover, Mu Zixin was also quite pretty. Why don't you guys go? Dripping Stone was full of disdain towards Blood Crimson Miles and his group's words. You go, you go. Hearing this, the others quickly waved their hands. Humph. A bunch of trash. Dripping Stone rolled his eyes at Blood Crimson Miles and his group in disdain, then walked into the store. Dear customer, what would you like to order? Our store has equipment made by master-level blacksmiths and potions made by advanced-level apothecaries. Wang Yu and Xuanzhen's reputation in Yuhuicheng was still very strong. Mu Zixin had never encountered anyone who looked for trouble since she opened the store. Therefore, when she saw a female player walking towards her, Mu Zixin did not put up her guard and asked as if it was normal. You definitely have what I want. Dripping Stone sized up Mu Zixin and said, but you might not give it to me. Is that so? Mu Zixin smiled and said, I'm a shop owner, and the customer is the Jade Emperor. As long as you need it, I will definitely sell it to you. Remember what you said? Dripping Stone smiled and said, then let's talk in private. As he spoke, Dripping Stone pointed outside the door. In the setting of Rebirth, Mu Zixin was the shop owner. As long as she was in the store, she had absolute power. If Mu Zixin was not lured out, she would not be able to do anything. Although Mu Zixin did not understand what Dripping Stone meant, she did not doubt his intentions. Therefore, she left the counter and followed Dripping Stone out of the door. However, just as Mu Zixin was about to leave the grocery store, Dripping Water wears through Stone suddenly turned around. His hand abruptly reached behind him and grabbed Mu Zixin's neck. Although Mu Zixin was a paladin, she was at most level 20. Moreover, she had not done any quests, so her strength was rather low. Dripping Stone was a chi master with low judgment. With just a light grab, Mu Zixin was completely controlled, and she could not move at all. Chapter 1682. After closing the door, Mu Zixin looked at the blood-colored 1,000 Miles and asked, W, what do you want? Mu Zixin's actions made the Crimson Miles not know whether to laugh or cry. The Crimson Miles laughed awkwardly. Don't worry, we're not here to steal your stuff. Not stealing? Mu Zixin looked at the others and said, then what do you want? I advise you to think carefully before you do anything. If you dare to do anything to me, I can't guarantee that others will do the same to you. Oh! Hearing Mu Zixin's words, the Crimson Miles was stunned. Although Mu Zixin was speaking the truth and thinking for the Crimson Miles and the others didn't feel that way at all. It felt like someone was pointing at their nose and warning them, don't mess with me, or you'll have to bear the consequences. The Crimson Miles and the others dared to block Xuanzhen, so they were quite confident. In the eyes of the Crimson Miles and the others, Mu Zixin's words were obviously a threat. Oh! Before the Crimson Miles could speak, the mountain breaker beside him couldn't help but frown and say, this girl is quite arrogant. How dare she threaten us? Do you know who we are? I don't care who you are. Mu Zixin said seriously, I'm just a businessman. If you can't live with me, you'll be going against yourselves. My husband is from Xuanzhen, and his name is Iron Ox. Logically speaking, Mu Zixin was already being extremely benevolent by saying all of this. Mu Zixin had been running the shop for a long time, and it wasn't that she hadn't met a bunch of greenhorns. With the principle of not causing trouble for Wang Yu, Mu Zixin would always tell them the severity of the situation and give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. Wang Yu's name could not be said to make people tremble with fear, but it was like thunder piercing the ears of Yuhui City. If a normal thief heard Mu Zixin's words, they would definitely realize their mistakes and turn back. After expressing their gratitude, they would silently leave. However, the moment Mu Zixin said this, the Crimson Miles and the others couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hee hee, Iron Ox of Xuanzhen? 1,000 Mile Crimson sneered and said, he's the one we're looking for. Tell him that the person who killed you is called 1,000 Mile Crimson. If he doesn't show up, I'll keep killing you until he shows up. At this point, the Crimson Thousand Miles waved its hand and said, "Kill him. There's no point in keeping him." And Water Dripping Stone nodded. He grabbed Mu Zixian with one hand and pressed his other hand against Mu Zixian's chest. He activated his inner force, and a ball of intense blue light appeared on his hand. Oscillating Fist. Chi Wave's advanced skill was a level 50 single-target Chi master skill. Its lethality was even greater than a high-level skill like Double Dragon Burst, and its casting speed was extremely fast. Mu Zixian was only a level 20 knight. How could she withstand the dripping water-piercing stone? Bang! Just as Mu Zixian was about to be one-shot by water-dripping stone, the sound of a bowstring rang out in the ears of the Crimson Miles and the others. The effects of a smart chip were indeed extraordinary. Normally, they wouldn't be able to see anything. However, when they heard the sound of the bowstring, the Crimson Thousand Miles and the others instinctively looked in the direction of the sound. They saw a 2-meter-long arrow as thick as a child's arm shooting toward Water Dripping Stone's head. At the same time, a black figure followed closely behind, flying toward the Crimson Miles and the others at an extremely fast speed. That person had a tall and sturdy body and an aggressive aura. It was without a doubt Wang Yu. Water Dripping Stone's reaction was also extremely fast. When he heard the sound of the bowstring, he swung his right hand to the right, and the oscillating fist that he had condensed flew out and collided with the arrow. However, Water Dripping Stone had clearly overestimated its skill's priority. The smart chip only increased the user's reaction speed and did not increase the game's attributes. Chi Master's priority was not high to begin with, and Water Dripping Stone still dared to use a skill to block such a terrifying arrow. It was obvious that he was overconfident. Pooh! With a muffled sound, the basketball-sized Chi wave was dispersed by the arrow. The remaining momentum of the arrow did not stop, and it flew straight toward Water Dripping Stone's temple. Seeing this, Water Dripping Stone, piercing, turned pale with fright. He hurriedly let go of Mu Zixian and turned around to grab the arrow. At this moment, Water Dripping Stone, piercing, felt a huge force coming from his hands. With the help of the smart chip, Water Dripping Stone's reaction speed was not too far off from a top-tier expert like Wang Yu. At this moment, Water Dripping Stone obviously did not dare to face such a strong force head-on. As such, Water Dripping Stone took a wrong step and hurriedly retreated. Bang! After retreating a few steps, Water Dripping Stone was hit by the arrow on the wall. At the same time, Water Dripping Stone's head tilted. Poochie! The arrow effortlessly stuck into the wall, sinking almost 10 centimeters into it. Water Dripping Stone immediately turned pale with fright. Thousand Miles Crimson and the others were also dumbfounded when they saw this. No matter how low the priority of Oscillating Fist was, it was still a level 50 skill. It still had some ability to block. However, this arrow was blocked by Oscillating Fist, and then Water Dripping Stone used it to retreat. Even after being blocked twice, it still had such power. If this arrow hit, wouldn't it directly kill someone? While Water Dripping Stone was still in shock, Wang Yu had already rushed in front of Water Dripping Stone, following behind the arrow. He slapped Water Dripping Stone's head. Water Droplet Pierce's Stone was a woman. When she saw Wang Yu's palm coming towards her, she subconsciously covered her face with her hands. In the end, Wang Yu's palm pressed down slightly, and her palm imprinted onto Water Droplet Pierce's Stone's chest. Chi Masters were a fragile class that was comparable to mages. Water Dripping Stone could bully a level 20 newbie, but how could she withstand Wang Yu's powerful palm? Bang! As the palm fell, Water Dripping Stone was directly smashed into a ball of white light by Wang Yu. Interesting. Wang Yu looked meaningfully at the hand that had slapped Water Dripping Stone to death. He couldn't help but think to himself, clearly, this is the real Oscillating Fist. As expected, one is marked by the company one keeps. After spending so much time with Chuanjin's people, a righteous man like Wang Yu's mind was filled with dirty tricks. Seeing Wang Yu kill Water Dripping Stone with a single palm, Thousand Miles Crimson and the others were once again shocked. Previously, Thousand Miles and the others were shocked by the power of the arrow. This time, however, Thousand Miles and the others were shocked by Wang Yu's skills. It wasn't hard to see that not only did Thousand Miles Crimson lack a certain level of understanding of Wang Yu, he might not even have watched professional matches before. In his eyes, Wang Yu was just a blacksmith from Chuanjin. Water Dripping Stone was the same as everyone else. He had a chip implanted in him. Others might not know his skill, but Thousand Miles Crimson was well aware of it. In terms of skill, Water Dripping Stone was no weaker than any professional player. Chapter 1683. As the saying went, cheats against cheats. Whoever is new is stronger. If not for the fact that Wang Yu was their enemy, Crimson Mile would have gone over to ask Wang Yu what kind of advanced technology he was using. That's right, Crimson Mile and the others didn't think that Wang Yu was very strong. Instead, they thought that Wang Yu was a scientist like them. After all, Crimson Mile knew what they were doing. How could there be someone stronger than cheats in this world? It was normal for Crimson Mile to have such a thought. Don't let him escape. After a moment of shock, Crimson Mile and the others quickly reacted. Crimson Mile waved his hand and ordered Wang Yu to attack. As he spoke, Crimson Mile knocked an arrow and aimed at Wang Yu. Sensing Crimson Mile's murderous intent, Wang Yu immediately turned around and yelled at Mu Zixin, "Go back to the shop." Bang! Before he finished speaking, Crimson Mile released his bowstring, and a dazzling light lit up. Wang Yu tilted his body slightly and dodged the arrow. However, at that moment, he saw a patch of white in front of him. Then, a blinding symbol appeared above his head. Sunset, active skill, shoots an arrow that shines like the sun, deals 120% physical damage to the target, and has a 3-second blinding effect. Cooldown, 60 seconds. MP cost, 10%. This was the skill of Crimson Mile's weapon. He didn't expect that the blinding effect of this skill could be triggered without hitting the target. It made sense. This thing was like a flashlight. It didn't matter if it hit the target or not. As long as the target saw the light, it would be blinded. Rebirth followed the logic of reality in certain aspects. 3 seconds of blinding wasn't too long, but in a fight between experts, 1 second was enough to decide the outcome. Moreover, Wang Yu wasn't facing an expert, but 5 immortals with cheats. Judging from Wang Yu's performance of tearing the dripping water-piercing stone with his bare hands, no one was surprised that Wang Yu had dodged the Thousand Miles blood arrow. Seeing that Wang Yu was blinded by Crimson Mile's arrow, Landslide, who was standing at the front, lowered his head and charged at Wang Yu. Dancing Ghost Withered Vine, who was in the back row, twisted his body and disappeared into the air. Suddenly, a golden light appeared, and he pulled out 2 katanas from the back of his waist and rushed towards Wang Yu with the earth-shattering force. The alley on the south side of the city was not wide, and a few of them were only a few meters away from Wang Yu. In the blink of an eye, Landslide Crack had already rushed in front of Wang Yu. He raised his fist and smashed it towards Wang Yu's head. How sensitive was Wang Yu's senses? From more than 10 meters away, his opponent could feel it with just a touch of their nose. Landslide was so close to Wang Yu. Although Wang Yu was blinded, he could still feel Landslide. He didn't have a weapon in his hand because the airflow caused by his fist and weapon could be sensed by a normal person with their eyes closed, let alone a kung fu master like Wang Yu. Clearly, the skill used in Landslide was the warrior's charge skill. For a warrior to engage in melee combat without a weapon, it was truly a bit of a stretch. Facing such a reckless opponent, Wang Yu naturally wouldn't let Landslide and Groundbreaker off. Therefore, Wang Yu took half a step back, clenched his left hand into a fist, and threw a punch at Landslide and Groundbreaker. But unexpectedly, Landslide's arm bent slightly, and a triangular shield appeared on his forearm. Duong! A loud sound rang out as Wang Yu's fist smashed into Landslide's shield. Landslide felt a huge force and was forced to take a few steps back. Meanwhile, a mosquito coil appeared above Wang Yu's head. It was Shield Bash. Skills had higher priority than normal attacks, and crowd control skills had higher priority. Although Wang Yu's attack was high, when his fist collided with Shield Bash, the system determined that he was stunned. It couldn't be helped. In this world, the system's arrangements were the most powerful. Wang had lost in terms of game experience. feeling that he was being controlled. Wang Yu couldn't help but feel surprised. Not only did Landslide have shield as a weapon, but it was also an arm shield. Arm shields were also a type of shield. However, they weren't very popular among shield warriors in the game. This was because shield warriors were the shield for the players behind them. Their mission was to protect the players behind them, so the thicker and wider the shield, the better. Even shield warriors would deliberately adjust their body size in order to better protect the players behind them. That way, they could better absorb damage. On the other hand, although the arm shield was very mobile, its defense and area of defense were much weaker than the tower shield. Shield warriors had always been synonymous with being as steady as a mountain and as hard as a rock. Carrying an arm shield and jumping up and down to block damage like a grandmaster of combat, it was really immoral. Because of this, there weren't many shield warriors in the game Rebirth who would carry this item. Moreover, the price was extremely low. Most players would either collect them or sell them in shops. Landslide and Earthrend was definitely not mainstream. They actually played with such a funny thing that was more meaningful than practical. Of course, what Wang Yu didn't know was that the smart ship also required attributes. If one didn't think and react quickly, it would be a waste if one's body couldn't keep up. If a cumbersome class like Shield Warrior wanted to adapt to the smart ship's effects, they had to increase their agility and use arm shields. That way, they could better utilize the chip. It wasn't just Landslide. The others were the same. Golden Flash was also a warrior. He also added his points to agility, and he also chose the extremely mobile samurai dual swords. Just as Wang Yu was stunned, Golden Flash immediately rushed in front of Wang Yu. He stepped forward with his right foot, grabbed the samurai dual sword with his right hand, and slashed upwards. He used Rising Dragon Slash on Wang Yu. Apart from charge, Rising Dragon Slash was the warrior class's most commonly used starting move. Rising Dragon Slash will be followed by Rising Dragon Slash, followed by Collapsing Mountain, Splitting Earth, and finally, Whirlwind Slash. When this set of skills was executed, even a shield warrior would lose half of their HP. Under normal circumstances, the target would not be so easily hit by a warrior's combo. However, Wang Yu is currently stunned and blinded. There was no way for him to retaliate at all. Golden Light flashed, and, of course, he had to use the combo that dealt the most damage. In the blink of an eye, just as Wang Yu was about to be knocked up by the Golden Light, Wang Yu suddenly circulated his internal energy, causing his internal energy to surge. At the same time, his body emitted a blue light, and the dizziness symbol on his head instantly dissipated. Dispelled from the stun, Wang Yu's left hand turned into a tiger's claw. He pressed down and grabbed the samurai dual sword in Golden Flash's right hand. Chapter 1684. Weapons were every player's most important possession. Seeing his katana being grabbed by Wang Yu in the sudden flash of golden light, Shifeng was greatly shocked. He hurriedly raised his left hand, grabbing his other katana and stabbing at Wang Yu. At the same time, the air behind Wang Yu distorted. Withered Vine then appeared behind Wang Yu and stabbed at Wang Yu's back with a dagger in hand. Wang Yu was not in a hurry. His right hand grabbed the other samurai sword that suddenly shone with a golden light. Then, he slightly leaned his waist and used the force of the samurai sword to counterattack. The golden light suddenly shone, and the long sword in his hand uncontrollably slashed toward the devil dancing Withered Vine. Magic dancing Withered Vine reacted quickly. Ignoring the principle of not harming members of the same team, it hurriedly retracted its dagger and held it horizontally across its chest. Dang! Along with a soft clang, Magic dancing Withered Vine's katana struck its dagger, forcing it to take a step back. Who would have thought that Golden Flash was also quite quick-witted? The two of them looked at each other, and Golden Flash immediately loosened his grip and threw the long saber in his left hand to Devil Dancing Withered Vine. Devil Dancing Withered Vine inserted the dagger into his thigh and caught the long saber. The two of them slashed horizontally towards Wang Yu's chest. Wang Yu was slightly taken aback. With a twist of her legs, her lower body also turned around. She leaped backward and retreated to the corner of the wall, dodging the attacks of the two. However, at this moment, the two of them twisted their hilts and stabbed their blades at Wang Yu. Almost at the same time, the Crimson Thousand-Mile Longbow was drawn and a row of arrows was shot at Wang Yu. In a hurry, the staff in his hand pointed downwards, and a wall of fire rose up to seal off the alley. Then, the wall of fire rapidly advanced towards Wang Yu's feet. At this moment, Wang Yu was in the innermost part of the dead end. Walls surrounded him on 3 sides, and magic dancing Withervine's firewall was right in front of him. In addition to the arrows and the firewall, magic dancing Withered Vine and magic dancing Withered Vine had no room to dodge. Seeing this, Wang Yu frowned slightly. Without saying a word, he leaped up and kicked the wall behind him. In an instant, he was several meters above the ground. With a somersault in midair, he flipped over the wall of fire. Without waiting for his body to land on the ground, Wang Yu kicked at the wall of fire with a thunderstomp. Just as Shi Wanhua was about to be sent flying by Wang Yu's kick, Landslide and Earth Splitter suddenly appeared in front of Shi Wanhua. He crossed his arms, and the 2 arm shields combined into one, forming a square shield that stood between Shi Wanhua and Wang Yu. Boom! After a dull sound of impact, Landslide Withered Vine was forced back a few meters. The HP bar above his head was shaken off by 10%. However, Wang Yu's attack was completely blocked by Landslide Withered Vine. Wang Yu did not move forward. Instead, he used the force from his feet to jump back onto the roof. Interesting, standing on the roof, Wang Yu looked at the 5 people in the alley with a hint of surprise on his face. Ever since Wang Yu started playing the game, he had always been invincible. Apart from a few top-level bosses, Wang Yu had always crushed his opponents. Even if he encountered a kung fu expert like Pure Ice, Wang Yu could deal with her with ease. Today was the first time he had been in such a difficult situation. First, he was blinded, then he was stunned. Not only was he almost killed in a corner, but even his Thunder Stomp, which was Wang Yu's proudest skill, was blocked. It was clear that the 5 people in front of him were stronger than first-rate professional players. As expected, technology was the #1 productive force. The other party only had a small chip, but it was comparable to the results of his 20 years of training. In the face of such powerful technology, it was not a shame that Kung Fu was eliminated. As for the 1,000 miles of blood in the alley, when they saw Wang Yu on the roof, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. With the support of the chip, 1,000 Miles Bloody and his team's reaction speed was almost superhuman. The strength that Wang Yu had displayed was absolutely unbelievable. The Grandmaster of Combat in front of them had not only insta-killed Water Droplet Piercing Stone with 1 palm strike, but had also forced back the mountain with 1 punch. He had also faced Golden Light and Demon Dancing Withered Vine head-on without any effort at all. Even under the cover of 2 long-range experts, he could still easily dodge all the attacks and counterattack the backline. Such a strong person had completely changed the understanding of 1,000 Miles Bloody and his team. The reason why cheaters were despised was because they used illegal methods to forcefully increase their strength to the point where even the top players in the game could not match up to them. Any one of 1,000 Miles of Blood's 5 players was no weaker than a first-rate pro player. However, with 5 cheats working together, they couldn't even deal a single drop of their opponent's HP. Anyone would start to doubt their own lives if they saw such a result. What was more terrifying was that before Wang Yu used Thunder Stomp to counterattack, he was in a blind state. Blind meant that he could not see. What kind of concept was that? To put it in a more sarcastic way, it would be, if I fought you with my eyes closed, you would not be a match for me. Boss. Looking at Wang Yu on the roof, Sudden Golden Light said in shock, "What the F***CK is going on? How the F***CK would I know?" 1,000 Miles Bloody was also on the verge of breaking down. Maybe his technology is more advanced than ours. Didn't you say that this is the most advanced technology? Sudden Golden Light asked. Technology is always improving. Don't you understand? You've wasted your time studying. 1,000 Miles Bloody rolled his eyes at Sudden Golden Light. Then what do we do now? Sudden Golden Light asked. Don't bother with him. 1,000 Miles Crimson turned around and pointed at Mu Zixien, who had almost reached the entrance of the grocery store. "We'll hold him off. You go grab that woman and distract him. I don't believe that he can still be so arrogant after his wife is attacked." Reality had proven that it was easy for people to lose their rationality in certain situations. Thousand Miles Bloody had actually tried to use Mu Zixian to threaten Wang Yu. He had obviously forgotten that they were in the game, and that life was not important to some people. What was even more ridiculous was that Thousand Miles Bloody knew that Wang Yu was not easy to deal with, yet he still dared to use Mu Zixian to provoke him. This was clearly a crazy test on the edge of death. After receiving Thousand Miles Bloody's order, Great Urgency did not hesitate. He turned around and chased after Mu Zixian. "You dare!" Although Thousand Miles Bloody's actions were unwise, he had still poked at Wang Yu's weak spot. Seeing that the extreme urgency had actually attacked Mu Zixian, Wang Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately became anxious. With an angry roar, he immediately leaped down from the roof and rushed toward the extreme urgency with extreme speed. Thousand Miles Bloody and the others were already prepared. Seeing Wang Yu descend from the sky, Landslide and Earth Splitter came out from the corner again. Before Wang Yu could land, Landslide and Earth Splitter jumped under Wang Yu, raised his middle finger, and shouted, "Grandson!" Chapter 1685. The moment Wang Yu was dragged to the ground by Earth Shatter, Golden Flash and Demon Dancing Vine surrounded him and stabbed at Wang Yu with their knives. In the game, the system's rules were insurmountable. Even if Wang Yu had an invincible skill, he would still feel his hands and feet tied after being taunted by Earth Shatter. Facing the two people who were charging at him, Wang Yu simply took the opportunity to lie down and use the Iron Bridge technique. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, Demon Dancing Withered Vine's long knife and dagger brushed past Wang Yu's face. Earth Shatter was shocked when he saw that Wang Yu was able to dodge his attacks. He hurriedly raised a shield and used Shield Bash on Wang Yu. Wang Yu knew very well how disgusting a shield warrior was. He immediately turned around and faced the ground with his back facing the Landslide earth-shattering shield. Then he placed his hands on the ground and stomped his feet on the ground. His feet were covered in lightning as he kicked the Landslide earth-shattering shield's arm. Bang! With a loud bang, Wang Yu's foot collided with the earth-shattering shield. Control skills had always had high priority. As one of the main control skills of shield warriors, Shield Bash had one of the highest priority skills among all shield warrior skills. Wang Yu's Thunder Stomp was also a control skill. Moreover, Wang Yu was most comfortable with it. Naturally, the priority of the skill was also relatively high. As for which of the two skills had higher priority, neither Wang Yu nor Earth Shatter knew. However, reality proved that when two control skills collided, the one with the higher strength would have higher priority. Although shield warriors mostly added vitality, a full set of heavy armor that did not add strength would not be able to wear it. Therefore, every shield warrior's strength and strength growth would not be too weak. Even though Earth Shatter was a non-mainstream skill that leaned towards agility, his strength was still very strong. Of course, being strong was one thing, but it depended on who he was compared to. Wang Yu's attributes had always focused on strength. With all the godly weapons he had, his strength had increased to an astronomical figure. After learning the skill Burning Prairie had given him, Wang Yu's strength attribute had been boosted even further. Currently, Wang Yu's strength attribute was not too far off from Rampant's. Because of this, there was a world of difference between Earth Shatter and Wang Yu's attributes. Boom! Another muffled sound rang out. Wang Yu's Landslide Earth Splitting hands were kicked to the chest by Wang Yu. Immediately after, Landslide Earth Splitting was sent flying by Wang Yu's kick as if he was riding on a cloud. Boom! Wang Yu had used a skill in this kick. Landslide and Earth Splitter flew back 4 to 5 meters, only stopping when he crashed into a wall. Like a ball of dough that had been thrown into a wall, he slid straight to the ground. It had to be said that Earth Shatter was quite capable. Not only was his reaction fast, but he was also very durable. He had been sent flying a few times by Wang Yu, but he still hadn't died on the spot. It was clear that the shield in his hand was at least a dark gold item. The instant Landslide Earth was sent flying, 1,000 miles of crimson snipe came flying over. Golden Flash and Dancing Demon Vine canceled their skills after missing their attacks. Their katana and dagger changed directions and stabbed towards Wang Yu's back. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu rolled forward on the ground and once again dodged the attacks of the three people. F***CK, F***CK, F***CK. Seeing that Wang Yu was able to dodge an attack of this level, 1,000 miles of crimson and the others were dumbfounded. Damn it. Is this guy even human? Why don't you just die? Some people are just like this. They don't care when they're cheating, but when they feel that someone else is cheating, they'll curse and curse as if they're the symbol of justice in their own world. However, 1,000 miles and the others' goal was to stop Wang Yu. They didn't think that they could kill Wang Yu so easily. So, although their teamwork didn't injure Wang Yu, it bought them some time. Mu Zixian's shop was located at the entrance of the alleyway. To prevent Mu Zixian from escaping back into the shop, they dragged her to the deepest part of the alleyway, where 1,000 miles and the others were currently surrounding Wang Yu. Mu Zixian was a paladin, so her movement speed was her weakness. With a lower level, she naturally couldn't compare to an agile mage like 1,000 miles. Just as Wang Yu was rolling on the ground after being beaten up, Sherwan hurriedly ran behind Mu Zixian. At this moment, Mu Zixian had already rushed to the entrance of the grocery store. Ground prison. Seeing that Mu Zixian was about to run, 1,000 miles slashed the ground with his staff. Rumble. A fire prison appeared out of nowhere, trapping Mu Zixian within. Restrain. Following this, 1,000 miles clenched his left hand, and the fire prison quickly turned into a rope that wrapped around Mu Zixian's body. Then, 1,000 miles pulled back, and Mu Zixian was tied up in 1,000 miles' hands. Even though Wang Yu and Mu Zixian were an old married couple, the relationship between them was so deep that it was hard to imagine it. After all, for Mu Zixian, Wang Yu was willing to give up his status as a young master to live in a foreign land. To Wang Yu, Mu Zixian was like a piece of his heart. Even though Wang Yu knew that no one would die in the game, he still didn't want Mu Zixian to be hurt. Seeing that Mu Zixian was caught, Wang Yu's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly stopped and shouted, "Don't hurt her!" Ha! Wang Yu's reaction was exactly what the Crimson 1,000 Miles and the others wanted. Seeing how nervous Wang Yu was, the Crimson 1,000 Miles and the others heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. They even laughed wretchedly and said, 100,000, your binding technique is very professional. You flatter me. 1,000 Miles said humbly, it's hard to say about men, but I've tied up countless women. Of course I'm a professional. Hey! Hearing 1,000 Miles' words, Mu Zixian turned around in disgust and spat at him. Huh! 1,000 Miles wiped the spit off his face and grinned. You've got quite the temper. The more you act like this, the more excited I get. 100,000. Don't go overboard. This isn't a game. You'll go to jail. When 1,000 Miles saw Wang Yu's anxious expression, he hurriedly raised his hand to stop him. Then, he smiled at Wang Yu and said, Brother Iron Bull, I didn't expect you to be such an expert. Oomph. Wang Yu coldly snorted and ignored the 1,000 Miles of Crimson. Ha! 1,000 Miles Crimson smiled awkwardly and said, Brother Iron Bull, do you know that the reason why I'm in such a mess with the Quanjin sect is all because of you? Chapter 1686. Cut the crap. Wang Yu stared angrily at 1,000 Miles and forcefully interrupted him, saying, Seeing that Blood Red War Flag is my friend, I have always been merciful to Blood Alliance's people. Hurry up and let my wife go. If not, don't blame me for being impolite. Wang Yu was very serious in her threat, but in the ears of the 1,000 Mile Crimson, it sounded like someone was telling a joke. After all, no matter how disobedient Blood Alliance players were, they were still a big guild with tens of thousands of people. Hearing Wang Yu's words, it sounded like they could be wiped out with just a breath. It was like a monkey telling you that he could fight 100,000 people. Whether or not he was bragging, a normal person would think that this person wasn't normal. Ayaya. 1,000 Miles Crimson didn't say that he didn't believe him. Instead, he casually waved his hand and said, Brother Iron Bull, why do you have to do this? I don't want to clash with you at all, but I have no choice. As long as you agree to my 3 conditions, I'll immediately release your wife. Conditions? Do you think you have a right to set conditions? Wang Yu asked with a cold face. Oh, 1,000 Miles turned around and looked at Mu Zixian. Do you think I don't have them? As he said that, 1,000 Miles didn't forget to point at 100,000 Miles and threaten him. This brother of mine isn't a good person. Hee hee. 100,000 Miles heard this and licked his lips. He stared at Mu Zixian. I like people like this. Everyone knew that Wang Yu was a wife-protecting demon. At this moment, he loved his wife and was afraid that 100,000 Miles would do something out of line. He could only helplessly say, "What conditions?" Actually, it isn't a problem for you. 1,000 Miles said, "First, leave Chuanjin and come to Blood Alliance. Second, lure those people from Chuanjin out. Third." Speaking up to this point, 1,000 Miles sized up Wang Yu and said, "I know why you're so strong. I hope you can hand over the item, and we can share the resources. These 3 conditions in exchange for your wife shouldn't be too much, right?" Oof. After the 3 conditions of the 1,000 Miles Crimson were finished, Wang Yu couldn't help but let out a cold snort. Forgive me for being blunt, but I also have 2 things to tell you. Tell me, Crimson 1,000 Miles said with a smile. 1. Wang Yu pointed at Mu Zixian and said, "My wife is not a commodity. Don't even think about using so-called conditions to objectify her. Secondly, I can repeat it again very seriously. You don't have the qualifications to talk about conditions, and I can't fulfill any of the 3 conditions you mentioned." Wang Yu had received quality education since he was young, so he was definitely outstanding in terms of morality. Leaving Chuanjin and joining Blood Alliance was considered betrayal and disloyalty. Luring out Chuanjin's men and killing them was considered betraying a friend. It was unjust. Sharing his family's martial arts with these scum was considered a betrayal of the family and unfilial. Using one's wife as a bargaining chip was considered as betraying one's family and heartless. What kind of thing was the 1,000 Miles Crimson? It actually dared to make Wang Yu do something so heartless, unjust, disloyal, and unfilial. Originally, Wang Yu thought that since 1,000 Miles Blood was part of the Blood Alliance, he would at most give them a beating and wouldn't go as far as to kill them all because of Blood Red War Flag and the Blood Alliance. However, 1,000 Mile Blood's actions were unforgivable to Wang Yu. Even if 1,000 Mile Blood apologized now, it would be too late. When 1,000 Miles Crimson heard this, he angrily pointed at Wang Yu and said, "Don't be so shameless. Don't you care about your wife's life?" Hearing 1,000 Miles Crimson's words, Wang Yu was stunned once again. He pondered for a moment and said, "Do you dare to kill her?" "Of course I won't kill her." At this moment, Shi Wanhua anxiously said with a smile, "But I will torture her." "How about it? Isn't it exciting just thinking about it?" When Shi Wanhua said this, Wang Yu couldn't help but squint his eyes. Shi Wanhua suddenly felt a chill down his spine. "Hey, can you guys listen to my opinion?" Just as the few of them were in a deadlock, Mu Zixian, who was tightly tied up, suddenly spoke. "Oh," 1,000 Miles Crimson was surprised and asked, "What opinion do you have?" You don't know, right?" Mu Zixian smiled and then looked at Wang Yu and said, "He listens to me the most. I can help you guys persuade him." "Is that so?" 1,000 Miles Crimson said. "Then hurry up and persuade him." About this, Mu Zixian looked at the ropes on her body and said, "You guys tie me up like this. It doesn't seem very sincere." "Haha, it's a small matter." 1,000 Miles Crimson raised his chin at Shi Wanhua and said, "Let her go." At the same time, he privately messaged, "Watch her closely. Don't let her escape." Mu Zixian was only a level 20 knight. In the face of Shi Wanhua's urgent situation, she obviously wouldn't escape so easily. Receiving 1,000 Miles Crimson's order, Shi Wanhua nodded and let go. The rope in his hand turned into a ball of flames and disappeared into the air. Hee. Mu Zixian smiled faintly and then moved her wrist. She then took out a scepter from her backpack. Seeing this, Blood Red War Flag and the others were confused. Didn't she say to persuade him? Was she going to use a stick to persuade him? They didn't expect Iron Ox to be so well-educated. However, just as they were thinking about it, Mu Zixian smiled and held the scepter with both hands and swung it upwards. Bang! The scepter smashed onto Mu Zixian's head, and Mu Zixian immediately turned into a white light. At the same time, Wang Yu received Mu Zixian's message, "Kill these scum." Damn! Seeing Mu Zixian commit suicide, Thousand Miles Crimson and the other's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Wang Yu was right. Blood-colored 1,000 Miles and the others did not dare to kill Mu Zixian. After all, Mu Zixian was a hostage. Furthermore, she was a condition that restricted Wang Yu. Killing Mu Zixian was equivalent to giving up on this bargaining chip. Therefore, after blood-colored 1,000 Miles and the others captured Mu Zixian, they did not immediately kill her, but instead tied her up. However, who knew that this little girl would be so cunning? She actually lied and said that she wanted to persuade him to surrender and set him up. Damn it, Thousand Miles Crimson's intestines were turning green with regret. As for Wang Yu, when he saw Mu Zixian commit suicide, his face immediately darkened. It was so gloomy that it seemed like it was about to drip water. Although Mu Zixian had committed suicide, in reality, she was forced to death by Thousand Miles Crimson. To force Wang Yu's wife to death in front of Wang Yu. What kind of behavior was that? This wasn't just stabbing at Wang Yu's heart. It was also a slap to Wang Yu's face. It was a slap to Wang Yu's dignity. As the ancients said, the hatred of killing one's father and stealing one's wife was absolutely irreconcilable. Even in the game, Wang Yu knew that dying once was not a big loss to Mu Zixian. However, even if it wasn't a big deal, it was still vile. When Mu Zixian was in the hands of Thousand Miles Crimson and the others, Wang Yu didn't dare to act rashly. Now that Mu Zixian was dead, Wang Yu had no more worries. Looking around at Thousand Miles Crimson and the others, Wang Yu said calmly, "Take care of the funeral." Chapter 1687. Bang! As he spoke, there was an explosive sound and a ray of golden light shot out from Wang Yu's body. The dazzling light was extremely eye-catching in the dark alley. Dragon Subduing Palm activated. What's going on? Seeing this scene, Thousand Miles and the others were dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? How could he transform? Where did this Super Scion come from? While they were still in a daze, Wang Yu raised his head and glanced at Wang Yu. The killing intent in his eyes caused Wang Yu, who was dozens of meters away, to have goosebumps all over his body. He felt a chill in his heart. Everyone knew that rebirth was a game, and dying in the game was not scary. However, Wang Yu didn't know why his body would have such a reaction when he was being stared at by Wang Yu. Even though Wang Yu was far away at the end of the alley, and he was at the intersection, Wang Yu still panicked and said, "The mountain! Quick! Quick, stop him! Don't let him come over." Hearing this, Landslide hurriedly lowered his head and charged at Wang Yu's back. Wang Yu didn't even turn his head. He casually threw a side-swing fist behind him. Seeing this, Landslide Crack immediately canceled his charge. He crossed his arms, and the arm shields on his arms formed a shield again. He turned his body sideways to block Wang Yu's fist. This time, Landslide had overestimated himself. With the help of the smart chip, Landslide had indeed reached the level of a professional player. However, in terms of equipment, there was still a gap between Landslide's equipment and that of a professional player's. In PvP in the game, equipment came first and skill came second. Just now, when Wang Yu was in his normal state, Landslide had been sent flying and was barely able to withstand it. Now that Wang Yu had activated Dragon Subduing Palm, Landslide still wanted to take it head-on. Wasn't he just asking for trouble? After all, when Wang Yu activated Dragon Subduing Palm, even the boss would be beaten to the point of calling for his daddy. Mountains crumble, and Earthrend would crack. Wang Yu had thought that he would be able to withstand this punch with just an exquisite shield. Subduing Dragon Esoteric Technique Crash. There was a crisp shattering sound. Wang Yu's fist heavily smashed on a Landslide shield. The shield on Landslide's arm shattered with a resounding sound. Wang Yu's fist didn't slow down at all. While shattering Landslide's shield, his fist also smashed on a Landslide's head. Landslide was not a mainstream tank, and it did not have a lot of HP. One could only imagine the outcome of taking a punch from Wang Yu with one's face. He did not even have time to make a sound before he was sent back to the resurrection point by Wang Yu with a punch. After being resurrected, Landslide's face was filled with confusion. It was as if everything that had happened was a dream. When Landslide Earthen Splitter realized that he had died once, he hurriedly checked his equipment. Then, Landslide Earthen Splitter screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Death was not scary. Losing equipment was the scariest thing. Other than that, the scariest thing was the complete destruction of equipment. After all, if the equipment was lost, it could be redeemed with some money. If the equipment was destroyed, it would be gone for good. The shield in Landslide's hand was the best piece of equipment he had. However, just now, it had been smashed into pieces by Wang Yu's punch. At this moment, it was lying quietly in Landslide's backpack. The information showed that it was a pile of scrap metal. He could only watch helplessly as his precious weapon was smashed into scrap metal. At this moment, the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. One could imagine the despair in his heart. What the F***CK? In the alley, when Golden Light and Demon Dancing Withered Vine saw that Wang Yu had destroyed the shield and killed the man with a single punch, their hearts skipped a beat. They felt as if they had been electrocuted, and goosebumps rose from the back of their heads to their heels. Not only did he kill someone, but he also destroyed their equipment. Can't he just have fun? This is too F***king scary. However, fear was fear. Golden Light and Demon Dancing Vine were not kind people. At this moment, running away was definitely not the solution. Therefore, they gritted their teeth and pounced forward. Demon Dancing Vine was an assassin. She was much faster than Golden Light when she was in quickness. Therefore, she rushed to Wang Yu's back first. She hugged her dagger with both hands and stabbed Wang Yu's back with backstab. Wang Yu frowned slightly. He raised his left elbow and used Tiger Strike with his right hand. At the same time, he twisted his waist. This caused the Demon Dancing Withered Vine to miss. At the same time, Wang Yu's fierce Tiger Strike accurately grabbed onto the dagger's hilt, while his left elbow struck the Demon Dancing Withered Vine's temple. Profound art of subduing dragon, hidden dragon. With the buff from Dragon's Subduing Palm, Wang used Tiger Strike and Elbow Strike combined into Hidden Dragon. No matter how unorthodox Landslide was, he was still a tank. Even he couldn't take a punch from Wang Yu, let alone a fragile assassin like Demon Dancing Vine. Bang! With another flash of white light, Demon Dancing Vine was killed by Wang Yu's elbow. The dagger in his hand also fell into Wang Yu's hand. At this moment, a golden light flashed, and two katanas appeared in front of Wang Yu. Wang Yu wasn't flustered at all. With a stretch of his left arm, he easily caught the two katanas in Golden Light's hands. Then, he clamped the two katanas under his armpits. Golden Light was shocked when he saw this. He hurriedly pulled back his weapons, but he died when he turned around. The dagger in his right hand slashed across Golden Light's throat. When the Golden Light appeared, he felt a chill on his throat. He subconsciously let go of his hand to touch his throat. However, as soon as his hand touched his throat, the HP bar on his head was emptied at an extremely fast speed. Then, he turned into a white light from his feet to his head. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu had killed the three people who had suddenly appeared with Golden Light, scaring the souls of the blood-colored 1,000 Miles and the 100,000 fire out of their bodies. F***CK. There's always someone stronger than you. There's always someone stronger than you. 1,000 Miles thought that with his smart ship, he could dominate Wuji in the game. However, he didn't expect to meet such a terrifying monster the moment he arrived in Yuhuicheng. Right now, 1,000 Miles Crimson was starting to wonder if his smart ship was working again. Even if it wasn't working, his strength had increased significantly. If it was working, why was he beaten up so badly? Could it be that the blacksmith from this small guild had technology that was a century ahead of him? Thinking up to this point, 1,000 Miles could no longer hide the fear in his heart. He immediately sent a message to 100,000 Miles, run. After sending the message, 1,000 Miles turned around and ran out of the alley without another word. 1,000 Miles was an archer and had added points into his agility. His speed didn't need to be described. Like a gust of wind, he ran to the entrance of the alley. Chapter 1688. With a flick of his fingers, Wang Yu took out a thick arrow from his back and knocked it on the bowstring. Pull the bowstring. Creak. The bowstring, which was as thick as 2 fingers, was pulled back into the shape of a full moon. Bang! Immediately after, Wang Yu spread his fingers, and the bowstring let out a thunderous crack. The thick arrow instantly flew behind the Crimson Mile like a meteor. Dong! With a muffled sound, the arrow stabbed into the Crimson Mile's back. The huge force sent the Crimson Mile flying, and he was pinned to the wall on the opposite street. Since Wang Yu's arrow did not hit the Crimson Mile's vitals, the poor Crimson Mile struggled for a moment before turning into a ray of white light. Holy **T. Seeing the Crimson Mile's death, Extreme Urgency was so scared that his soul almost flew out of his body. If Wang Yu had killed the Crimson Mile with 1 arrow, it would have been fine. When the arrow landed, a ray of white light appeared. This kind of death was not surprising to players. However, when the Crimson Mile was pinned to the wall and struggled in pain, the visual effect was quite terrifying. After all, for the sake of the player's gaming experience and mental health, the death effects in the game were more harmonious. No matter how many people killed and looted in the game, they had never seen such a terrifying scene. When Extreme Urgency saw this, his legs immediately turned to jelly. Try running. At this moment, Wang Yu's cold voice reached Extreme Urgency's ears. Extreme Urgency's body trembled, and he could not help but turn around. What a joke! The Crimson Mile was a full agility archer, and he could run faster than a dog. If even he was killed with 1 arrow, how could a short-legged mage like him? If he ran forward, he would probably die even faster. Shirwan Huoji turned around. Wang Yu had already jumped in front of Shirwan Huoji, grabbed his collar, and threatened him with a black face. I can't do anything else, but I'm a professional at killing people. I know. Hearing this, Extreme Urgency hurriedly nodded in agreement. You look quite scared. Wang Yu glanced at him anxiously and said, The more you act like this, the more excited I am. At this point, Wang Yu imitated the way he treated Mu Zixian just now and licked his lips. He was so anxious that his hair stood on end. **CK. In order to protect women, this game specifically set up a simulated assault system. But the game didn't explicitly set up a simulated assault system for men. Could it be that this guy? Rest assured. Seeing Wan Hua trembling in fear, Wang Yu laughed viciously. I won't kill you so easily. With that said, a pair of wings sprouted from under Wang Yu's ribs. With a flap of his wings, he flew straight towards the direction of Central Street. A moment later, Wang Yu carried Wan Hua and landed on the roof of the priest church. Then, he took out a rope from his backpack and tied a dead knot on Wan Hua before hanging him on the cross. Wan Hua's head tilted, and he was hung on the cross by Wang Yu like Christ on the cross. Making a public display was an extremely humiliating act. In order to express the anger in their hearts, the ancients often liked to behead their targets and hang them on the city walls as a public display. Not only could they injure the opponent physically, but they could also humiliate the opponent spiritually. Would they still have any face when they were dead? It could also intimidate others. Those who had even the slightest contact with Wang Yu knew that Wang Yu was a modest and polite person. He also liked to leave some leeway when doing things. As long as others admitted defeat, Wang Yu would let them go. At this time, he actually grabbed Wan Hua and hung him on the cross in Yu Huichang Church as a public display. It was clear how angry Wang Yu was. Although the church wasn't the tallest building in Yu Huichang, it was the most iconic. The players in Yu Huicheng quickly noticed Wan Hua on the cross. Hanging someone in public, **CK, who was so arrogant as to do such an arrogant thing in Yu Huicheng. It was human nature to watch the excitement. Seeing Wan Hua on the cross, everyone gathered around the church. It didn't take long for the church to be filled with players. No wonder he was so ruthless. So is this guy. When everyone saw Wang Yu sitting under the cross, they all came to a realization. Wang Yu is famous in Yu Huicheng, especially in the eyes of the veteran players in Yu Huicheng. He was a godlike existence, hunting down the bird of paradise, soloing the Blood Alliance, killing 1,000 people, fighting 10,000, and even leading a group of people to protect Yu Huicheng. Even if a new player stayed in Yu Huicheng for 2 weeks, they would be able to recite all of Wang Yu's past deeds like reciting a poem. At this time, Wang Yu was just hanging a sky lantern on the Churchill. There was nothing to be surprised about. After all, in the eyes of the Yu Huicheng players, even if Wang Yu destroyed Yu Huicheng, it would still be within their expectations. On the other hand, they didn't know who this player on the cross was, but he dared to provoke this lord. This was the most inconceivable thing for everyone. Seeing more and more players gathering on the ground, Wang Yu stood up and asked Shi Wanhua, other than Thousand Miles Crimson, what are the names of the others with you? Shi Wanhua looked at Wang Yu and didn't answer. This question was too urgent for Shi Wanhua to answer. After all, no matter how embarrassing he was right now, it wouldn't affect his life in real life. If he exposed the others, he would be betraying his teammates. Shi Wanhua was just an employee. How could he dare to offend his colleagues in real life? Don't ask, or you can kill me. I won't tell you the names of the others. Shi Wanhua on the cross said anxiously. Is that so? Wang Yu narrowed his eyes. I have a friend who is good at stealing. You don't have to tell me who the others are, and I can have him take off your clothes every minute until you're naked. You. The moment Wang Yu said this, Shi Wanhua's face turned green. From his words, it wasn't hard to tell that Shi Wanhua wasn't a good person in real life. However, no matter how bad he was, his target was the opposite sex. He didn't think that he would meet a hooligan who actually wanted to take off a guy's clothes. Of course, the main point wasn't whether he wanted to take off a guy's or a girl's clothes. The main point was that Shi Wanhua was hung on a cross. If he was stripped naked, how would he be able to survive in Shi Wanhua? Where would Blood Alliance's face go? How would other players introduce Shi Wanhua in Blood Alliance in the future? Oh, Shi Wanhua. He had heard of it before. He was the one who was stripped naked and hung on a roof. Oh, Blood Alliance. He had also heard of it before. One of their guild members had been stripped naked and hung on the roof to dry sausages. Shi Wanhua didn't care whether or not Blood Alliance had face. The key was that this kind of thing could make him unable to raise his head in the gaming circle for the rest of his life. He would also become a laughingstock in real life. After all, there were many people in the game who wanted to watch the show. If he took a picture and put on the forums, wouldn't the whole world know? Chapter 1689. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the system? Extreme Urgency asked in fear. It doesn't matter. Wang Yu said calmly. My friend's gaming is just a side job. Plus, he's going to be a live-in son-in-law soon, so he doesn't have time to play games. If he wants to punish him, then so be it. At most, he'll just ban his account. As for Yunf. As he said this, Wang Yu sized up Extreme Urgency and then looked at the Yu Huicheng players below him. He then let out a cold laugh. Wang Yu's laugh wasn't a big deal, but Extreme Urgency was so scared that his tongue was trembling. He hurriedly said, I'll tell you, that shield warrior is called Landslide, that, in an instant, the 1,000 Miles of Crimson and the others' backgrounds were revealed in full detail. As he said this, Extreme Urgency didn't forget to brainwash himself. Since everyone wanted to kill Chuanjin's people, it didn't matter if he said it out loud. It was better than being hung naked in front of everyone. Good brothers were loyal, so it was better for them to die than for each other. At least you know what's good for you. After getting the IDs of the others, Wang Yu nodded his head in satisfaction. He sent the IDs to Chuanjin's people and then to Bloody Wind Whisper. He asked, are you going to hand these people over yourself, or do you want Blood Alliance to die with you? After doing all this, Wang Yu jumped off the roof. Seeing that Wang Yu was about to leave, Extreme Urgency panicked and said, Nio go. Uncle Nio, Grandpa Nio, don't go. What'll I do if you leave? None of my business. Wang Yu rolled his eyes at Extreme Urgency and entered the crowd without looking back. Seeing this, Yu Huicheng and the other players hurriedly opened up a path and watched as Wang Yu disappeared into the street. Chun Xiang was also a player who had learned clairvoyance. After Wang Yu sent the IDs of Bloody Mile and the others to the guild channel, Chun Xiang quickly provided his coordinates. The people from Thousand Miles of Blood weren't stupid. After knowing that Wang Yu's technology was much more advanced than theirs, they knew that they wouldn't be a match for him one by one. As such, the first thing they did was to gather together. Right now, they were hiding in the Blood Alliance's office, trying to find a chance to ambush Wang Yu. At the same time, Bloody Wind Whisperer also received a message from Wang Yu. Seeing the two paths Wang Yu had given it, Bloody Wind Whisperer felt like crying. Sure enough, the thing that it was most worried about had happened. With so many Blood Alliance players, Blood Wind Whisperer had naturally heard about what Blood Thousand Miles had just done. Bloody Wind Whisperer had warned Bloody Mile long ago not to provoke Chuanjin. Not only did this guy not listen, but he also provoked him even more. Not only did he play with fire, but he also played with Wang Yu's weakness. Wasn't he just asking for trouble? Based on Bloody Wind Whisperer's understanding of Wang Yu sending it two paths meant that he treated Blood Alliance as a friend. After all, Bloody Mile was the guild leader of Blood Alliance. For Wang Yu to draw a line between Bloody Wind Whisperer and the others in Blood Alliance at this time, it was clear that Wang Yu didn't want to be enemies with Blood Alliance. Of course, Bloody Wind Whisperer didn't want to be enemies with Wang Yu either. However, one couldn't do as one wished. Bloody Wind Whisperer's job was given by Bloody Mile's father, and the money it got was also given by the boss. Of course, Wang Yu could be principled and separate Bloody Wind Whisperer from Blood Alliance. However, if Bloody Wind Whisperer did so, wouldn't it be a traitor? After all, to ordinary players, the game was just a platform for entertainment. To Bloody Wind Whisperer, the game was work. No matter what happened, Bloody Wind Whisperer had to protect its boss's interests. Even if Wang Yu had given Bloody Wind Whisperer an easier path, Bloody Wind Whisperer still wouldn't take it. After receiving Wang Yu's message, Bloody Wind Whisperer didn't reply. Instead, it contacted Bloody Wind Whisperer and asked anxiously, "Boss, where are you? Run. Yu Huicheng, you can't stay here any longer." In all honesty, Bloody Wind Whisperer said this for Bloody Wind Whisperer's own good. However, Bloody Wind Whisperer had suspected that Bloody Wind Whisperer had leaked information to Chuanjin. When he saw Bloody Wind Whisperer's message, Bloody Wind Whisperer's lungs almost exploded. F***CK off. I've only taken over Blood Alliance for half a day, and he's already telling me that I can't stay in Yu Huicheng anymore. What does he mean? F***CK off. In his anger, the Blood Thousand Miles brain wasn't working very well. He immediately rushed over. "You traitorous piece of trash. No wonder you tipped off the Chuanjin sect. So you wanted to chase me away and become the leader of the Blood Alliance, right? F***CKU. After receiving Bloody Wind Whisperer's message, Bloody Wind Whisperer was stunned. Then, the anger in his heart rose to his head. To be honest, although Bloody Wind Whisperer had his own thoughts, no matter what, he was wholeheartedly working for Blood Alliance. At this moment, he was even willing to go against Chuanjin. Not only did Bloody Wind Whisperer suspect Bloody Wind Whisperer, he even slandered him. One could imagine how Bloody Wind Whisperer was feeling right now. It felt as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water on his head. Bloody Wind Whisperer's heart was like dead ashes. Good words couldn't persuade a damned ghost. Kindness couldn't save a suicidal person. Bloody Wind Whisperer's actions were simply unreasonable. In today's society, blind loyalty was no longer important. Of course, Bloody Wind Whisperer wouldn't help Bloody Wind Whisperer. Since Bloody Wind Whisperer suspected Bloody Wind Whisperer, Bloody Wind Whisperer's guild definitely wouldn't accept Bloody Wind Whisperer. Since that was the case, why not establish his own flag? Anyway, Blood Alliance had developed for many years. They had a scale and a main city. They were a top guild. With such conditions, it would be easy for them to find another guild. Thinking up to this point, Bloody Wind Whisperer decided to go all the way and directly replied to Wang Yu. Bloody Wind Whisperer is Bloody Wind Whisperer. It has nothing to do with the Brothers of Blood Alliance. I hope that Nyo Gu will remember our past relationship and be merciful to our brothers in the guild. After sending the message to Wang Yu, Bloody Wind Whisperer pulled all the core members of Blood Alliance into a chat group and said, Bloody Wind Whisperer's actions have already angered Iron Ox. Blood Alliance will definitely be finished in his hands. Brothers, if you are willing to work with me, then let's make a statement. If not, then follow Bloody Wind Whisperer to fight Xuanjin. The players of Blood Alliance didn't have a good impression of this new guild leader. Now that Bloody Wind Whisperer had made such a big mess, more than 80% of Blood Alliance's players wanted to leave the guild to save their intelligence. However, because of the deep bond between the brothers and the guild, they didn't express it. Now that Bloody Wind Whisperer had this thought, on one hand, he had to change the world with his old brothers. On the other hand, he had to follow the retarded guild leader and fight Xuanjin. This choice wasn't hard to make. Chapter 1690. I'm relieved to hear that. Bloodwind Whisperer was touched and said, but now is not the time. Blood Alliance is still Blood 1,000 Miles business. We can't just leave like this. We have to think of a way to cut ties with Blood 1,000 Miles. Does anyone have a good idea? Hearing Bloodwind Whisperer's words, everyone fell silent. They were all men. Why didn't Blood Red War Flag and Bloodwind Whisperer leave the guild after suffering so much? At the end of the day, Blood Alliance's business didn't belong to Blood Red War Flag or Bloodwind Whisperer. It didn't belong to Blood Alliance's players either. It belonged to the boss behind Blood Alliance. Bloodwind Whisperer and Blood Red War Flag were employees. If they wanted to leave, they could just resign. However, they couldn't take away Blood Alliance's base and main city. The world was bustling and everyone was after profits. Blood Alliance was created by Blood Red War Flag and the others. If they couldn't take away anything, then there was no point in leaving. After all, they were all middle-aged people. They weren't at the age where they could leave just because they wanted to vent their anger. The reason why Bloodwind Whisperer asked everyone to come was to discuss how to take away Blood Alliance's business when they left. The more people there were, the more ideas there were. Even if these core members couldn't keep up with Bloodwind Whisperer, they could still come up with a plan. However, what disappointed Bloodwind Whisperer was that it was difficult to do. After all, they had been in the underworld for so many years. They had never seen anyone take away a company when they left. Was this even considered a job change? This was a plot to usurp the throne. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Not knowing what they should do, this was reasonable. If they really had a plan, they would all be big bosses in real life. Just as Bloodwind Whisperer was in a dilemma, Wang Yu saw Bloodwind Whisperer's reply. To be honest, Wang Yu was quite satisfied with Bloodwind Whisperer's choice. After all, Xuanjin and Blood Alliance had been brothers for so long. Wang Yu didn't want to betray innocent Blood Alliance players because of a few retards. After receiving Bloodwind Whisperer's reply, Wang Yu forwarded the message to Wuji. Seeing Wang Yu's message, Wuji smiled, opened his friend list, and sent a message to Bloody Wind Whisperer. While Bloody Wind Whisperer was at a loss, he suddenly received a private message from Wuji. He clicked on it and saw that Wuji said, "Phone you, I guess you must have something on your mind now." Seeing the letter was like seeing the person himself. Wuji's treacherous face immediately appeared in front of Bloody Wind Whisperer. Bloody Wind Whisperer knew that it could not hide it from Wuji, so it answered honestly, "I do have something on my mind." Wuji laughed and said, "I can guess what's on your mind. I can help you." "Really?" Bloodwind Whisperer was shocked. "You can help me just because you know what I want to do?" Bloody Wind Whisperer knew how difficult it was to do what it wanted to do. Although the Blood Alliance was slowly built up by Blood Alliance players, it was still Blood 1,000 Mile Alliance's business in name. It was against the rules to take the Blood Alliance away. Why did Wuji sound like he was joking around? Did he not know what he was trying to do? Wuji smiled faintly. "Don't you want to take all of Blood Alliance's businesses and leave?" Bloodwind Whisperer was shocked again, Of course. Wuji smiled and said, "I have a plan that can let you take all of Blood Alliance's businesses away." "Boss Wuji, you're not joking, right?" Bloodwind Whisperer replied in disbelief. "I mean take all of Blood Alliance away, not all of their players." "I'm definitely not joking," Wuji said calmly. It just depends on whether you are willing to cooperate or not. Let's not talk about cooperating first. Bloodwind Whisper wasn't an idiot. It knew that making a deal with Wuji was like asking a tiger for its skin. Naturally, it wouldn't agree to Wuji's request so easily. Instead, it had a plan in mind. It was always easier to talk to smart people. How could Bloodwind Whisper's plan escape Wuji's eyes? Wuji didn't mind Bloodwind Whisper being wary of him. He said calmly, "It's simple, as long as Blood Alliance loses to us." "Lose to you?" Hearing Wuji's words, Bloodwind Whisper's eyes lit up. It immediately understood Wuji's plan. "You mean that Xuanjin wants to play 5-card stud with Blood Alliance?" 5-card stud, as the name suggested, was to go all out and throw out all of their trump cards. In the online game, it meant that 2 guilds were fighting to the death. It was different from normal guild encampment battles. Normal guild encampment battles would at most lose 1 encampment. 4 large guilds with many encampments. Losing 1 or 2 encampments was nothing. Life and death battle was to use all of the assets of both guilds as stakes. 1 round would determine the winner and the loser. That was why players called it 5-card stud. Of course, a 5-card stud wasn't the same as a normal guild war. In a normal guild war, if one side refused to accept the challenge, the other side could forcefully attack. However, a death match required both guilds to agree. As long as they accepted the challenge, one of the 2 guilds would disappear forever. Players didn't play as guilds in the game to gamble. Under normal circumstances, if there wasn't too much hatred between players, no one would fight to the death. Also, the bigger the guild, the more prudent they would be. They wouldn't joke around with their entire fortune. It wasn't that there weren't any life and death battles in Rebirth, but they were mostly small guilds. After all, everyone was barefooted and didn't even have a guild encampment. There was no difference between a life and death battle and a life and death battle. The meaning behind Wuji's words was obvious. He wanted to have a 5-card stud with Blood Alliance. "That's right," Wuji said. "You guys don't even need to do anything. As long as we take down Blood Alliance's encampment, Blood Alliance will belong to Xuanjin. When the time comes, I'll transfer it to you. Isn't that great?" "Transfer?" Bloodwind Whisper smiled bitterly. "Based on what I know, Boss Wuji isn't the kind of person who would help others for free. The people from the Quan Jun sect were famous for being bad people. Their motto was to take advantage of others and not suffer losses. As the leader of this group of hooligans, how could Wuji be a selfless person? He might even swallow the Blood Alliance in 1 gulp and not even spit it out." Even though Xuanjin only had a dozen people, Bloodwind Whisper didn't doubt their appetite at all. Chapter 1691. How much? Hearing the words transfer fee, Bloody Wind Whisperer felt slightly relieved. After all, the person who was doing the deal was the boss of Xuanjin, who was known for his evil deeds. If he really said that he didn't want a single cent, Bloody Wind Whisperer would definitely worry that Wuji had other intentions. 1,000,000 gold coins. Wuji said, "Not a single cent less." "All right, that's settled." Receiving Wuji's message, Bloody Wind Whisperer agreed without hesitation. 1,000,000 gold coins was no small sum. Even for a guild like Blood Alliance with 10,000 people, if it was split amongst everyone, it would be dozens of gold coins. Of course, Bloody Wind Whisperer's heart ached for a mere transfer fee of 1,000,000 gold coins. However, Bloody Wind Whisperer knew better than anyone that the higher the price Wuji asked for, the more it proved that his intentions were not with Blood Alliance, but that he really wanted money. 1,000,000 gold, compared to the entire Blood Alliance, wasn't even worth mentioning. Hee. Receiving Bloody Wind Whisperer's message, Wuji smiled and threw the barbecued meat in his hand to place one's pride, then stood up. Wuji was the only one in Xuanjin who knew how to cook. Everyone was drinking and eating meat around the bonfire. Seeing the chef suddenly put down his work, they were all stunned and asked, "Where are you going?" "Finish the barbecue." "Barbecue my ass." Wuji kicked the bonfire away and said, "Do you really want to stay here for the rest of your lives? We should go out." "Go out? Can't Uncle Nyo deal with Bloody Miles alone?" To place one's pride asked in surprise. Hearing to place one's pride say this, Everyone else was shocked. No one knew better than the people in Chuanjin how strong Wang Yu was. Who was Bloody Miles? Even Wang Yu couldn't deal with them. Of course we can, Wu Ji said calmly, but Old Cow's methods can only treat the symptoms. We have to deal with the root of the problem. After saying that, Wu Ji roughly explained the deal between him and the blood-colored wind whisper to the rest of the Quanjin sect. My God! After hearing Wu Ji's words, everyone from Chuanjin stared at Wu Ji in a daze. They were overwhelmed with shock. Cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots? This old dog Wu Ji was really too ruthless. Indeed, Wu Ji was right. Wang Yu was a righteous person in the way he did things. This time, it was Bloody Miles who offended Wang Yu. The people in Blood Alliance didn't interfere. With Wang Yu's personality, as long as Wang Yu didn't interfere, he wouldn't do anything to them. Wang Yu only had one way to take revenge, and that was to chase and kill until the Crimson Thousand Miles admitted defeat. However, Thousand Miles was still the boss of the Blood Alliance. Even though Thousand Miles didn't have much prestige in the Blood Alliance and couldn't command its players, a guild of 30,000 players was still a force to be reckoned with in the game. 1,000 Miles of Blood was different from Blood Red War Flag and Bloodwind Whisper. This kid was working for him, and he had a killing weapon like Blood Alliance in his hands. How could he possibly submit to a small guild like Complete Reality Sect forever? So, as long as Blood Alliance was in Bloody Miles' hands, it would be a threat to Chuanjin. No matter how many times Wang Yu killed Bloody Thousand Miles, it was only enough to make him stop for a while. The only way to make Bloody Thousand Miles stop was to take over Blood Alliance from his hands. Now that Bloody Miles had come to Blood Alliance out of nowhere, he didn't have much prestige in the guild and was suspicious of the elders, causing the upper echelons of Blood Alliance to be divided. This was the best time to get rid of Bloody Miles. If Bloody Miles settled down in Blood Alliance and stabilized his position, it wouldn't be so easy to get rid of him. However, everyone still had some objections to Wu Ji's plan. Why did you give Blood Alliance to Bloodwind Whisper? We can play with it ourselves. After thinking about it, Mingdu rolled his eyes. Since it's a threat, why not take control of Blood Alliance? I'm not talking about Blood Alliance, but the tens of thousands of players in Blood Alliance. Wu Ji waved his hand. Blood Alliance has so many bases in a main city. Our Chuanjin only has so few people, and you want to take over Blood Alliance's territory? You are Li Mingdu, not Li Yunlong. Would you dare to attack Taiyuan if I gave you a division? As he said this, Wu Ji paused. Just eat your fill, but don't be greedy. Do you understand this? People with great wisdom knew how to control their own desires. Although Wu Ji was greedy, he knew when to give up. The reason why Chuanjin hadn't been wiped out yet was because Wu Ji knew when to let go and didn't keep stuffing things into his pockets. At the end of the day, Quanjun sect was just a small guild. They did not have the energy and manpower to control so many territories. If they were too greedy, it would be easy for them to collapse. Unhindered was a good example. Moreover, Blood Red War Flag and Bloodwind Whisper definitely wouldn't offend Chuanjin. As long as Blood Alliance was there, no matter if it was Yu Huicheng or Saga City, there would be a strong force protecting them. Like this, the two guilds would form a delicate balance. If the Quanjin sect really wanted to swallow up the Blood Alliance, not only would it break this balance, but it would also send the tens of thousands of players from the Blood Alliance to the opposite side. Swallowing up the Blood Alliance might seem like the Quanjin sect had the upper hand, but if they really did that, not only would the Quanjun sect lose the protection of the Blood Alliance, but they might also be wiped out. As a person, one must always have a long-term vision. How did Wu Ji become the leader of the Quanjin sect? Was it because he was shameless? Wasn't it because Wu Ji always made the right choice? Oh, okay. Who knew whether or not Mingdu understood Wu Ji's words, but he still nodded his head. The scene changed. Wu Ji and the others exited the dungeon and arrived outside the Blood Church. After looking around and confirming that there was no danger, Wu Ji used his authority as the guild leader to request a death match with Blood Miles. Within the Blood Alliance office, Blood Miles and the others were thinking about how to take care of Chuanjin. Suddenly, Blood Miles received a system notification. System notification. Chuanjin's guild leader Wuji has requested a death match with your guild. Do you accept? Friendly reminder, for your physical and mental health and the safety of your assets, please confirm your choice. Whoa. Seeing Wuji's application, the blood scarlet 1,000 Miles eyes widened. You can wear out iron shoes looking for it, but by chance you find it. Damn it. Why did the blood-colored 1,000 Miles gang offend Wang Yu? It was all because they couldn't find anyone from the Quanjin sect. Chapter 1692. Originally, 1,000 Miles thought that with their smart ships, it would be more than enough to take care of Chuanjin. However, when they realized that Wang Yu had more technology than them, they realized that there was a reason why Chuanjin was able to do so well in Yuhuichen. At this moment, 1,000 Miles couldn't even take care of Wang Yu alone, let alone take care of Chuanjin. Therefore, after being killed by Wang Yu, the first thing 1,000 Miles thought of was to gather the other Blood Alliance players to deal with Chuanjin. After all, there was strength in numbers. In this world where cold weapons were the main weapons, this was an unchanging truth. 1,000 Miles had thought of this before, but the Blood Alliance players didn't buy it. Once they heard that they were going to take the initiative to fight Chuanjin, not only did the players threaten to leave the guild, but even the senior core players objected. As a guild leader that came out of nowhere, 1,000 Miles had no authority at all. Of course, he couldn't command these bastards for Blood Alliance. However, it was different for Chuanjin to take the initiative to declare war on Blood Alliance. Everyone played the game to their heart's content. It was fine if nothing happened, but one shouldn't look for trouble. In real life, one had to fight back after being bullied. If they didn't accept a challenge in the game, they would be too cowardly. If news of this spread, they wouldn't even be able to lift their heads. Anyone with a bit of courage wouldn't allow something like this to happen to them. For Chuanjin to declare war on Blood Alliance at this point in time, it was like sending a fat piece of meat to their doorstep. One had to know that although Chuanjin wasn't big, their assets couldn't be compared to any other guilds. Setting aside the guild residences, Immortal Abode Island already had 3 main cities, including Afterglow City. One of them, Yamatai City, was the largest main city on Immortal Abode Island and possessed the largest mining area. The reason why 1,000 Miles wanted to make life difficult for Chuanjin was because they felt that a small guild like Chuanjin didn't deserve to have so many things. Now that Chuanjin had taken the initiative to send themselves to their doorstep, the opponent was so weak and the stakes were so high, how could they not accept the challenge? Perhaps the 2 blacksmiths in Chuanjin would join the Blood Alliance after they became homeless. After all, a fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. At the thought of this, the Crimson 1,000 Miles did not hesitate and immediately chose to fight. At this time, an announcement sounded in the sky above Yuhuichen. Chuanjin has declared war on Blood Alliance. Blood Alliance's leader, Blood 1,000 Miles, has chosen to accept the challenge. History cannot be changed without war. Let's all wait and see who will win this battle. The system announcement was repeated 3 times, resounding throughout the universe. The players of Yu Huicheng who saw the announcement all revealed expressions of disbelief. F*CK. Didn't the Blood Alliance and Chuanjin wear the same pair of pants? What the hell is going on? Most players' minds were filled with questions. The relationship between Chuanjin and Blood Alliance was something that Yu Huicheng's players could see. Although these 2 guilds had a conflict before, in the end, Blood Alliance admitted defeat. Afterwards, these 2 guilds had all sorts of ambiguous relationships and even became brother guilds. Not long ago, these 2 guilds dared to work together to destroy Finger the Heavens. Why were they suddenly fighting each other now? Moreover, it was such a terrifying death match. Death match? Wasn't that something that only small guilds that didn't even have a guild base used to show off? A big guild with so many industries would do such a thing. Were their brains fried? You guys don't understand. Have you seen the 3 kingdoms? One mountain can't have 2 tigers. The weakest Finger the Heavens has already been eaten. Chuanjin and Blood Alliance will have a battle sooner or later. Conspiracy theory players started to boast about the 3 kingdoms war that they had imagined. Some of the more observant players noticed some details. Eh, isn't Blood Alliance's leader blood red war flag? When did they change? Change? Eh, how did it become this kid? After being reminded by the observant players, the others also noticed that on the system announcement, the leader of Blood Alliance had become a stranger. Everyone had seen the change of dynasties too many times. After seeing the Blood Alliance's leader become the Blood Thousand Miles, everyone could pretty much guess what had happened between the Quan Jun sect and the Blood Alliance. After the peaceful Blood Red War flag was forcefully removed, they were replaced by Blood Thousand Miles, who was in charge of fighting. Having guessed this, everyone's thoughts quickly changed. What do you guys think? Who do you think will win? It was a game, so fighting was common. Everyone wasn't curious about the reason. They were curious about the result. Do you even need to ask? Of course it's Blood Alliance. They have tens of thousands of people. Facing this question, the new player threw out the answer without hesitation. It couldn't be denied that Xuanjin was very strong, but Xuanjin only had a dozen people. With such a huge gap, even if Xuanjin was strong, what use would it be? In the face of absolute suppression of strength, all tricks were gaudy. There was no doubt who would win or lose. Are you sure? That's Xuanjin. Seeing the new players make such a solemn vow, the old players of Afterglow City all curled their lips. The fiendish faces of the Xuanjin sect involuntarily appeared in their minds, and the tall Grandmaster of Combat in the crowd was more eye-catching than anyone else. If it was any other small guild challenging Blood Alliance, everyone would definitely think that Blood Alliance would win without hesitation, just like the new player. However, if Blood Alliance's opponent was Xuanjin, then everything had to be planned. In the past, tens of thousands of players had besieged Illumination City. It was the Quan Jun sect who had turned the tide and repelled the besieging guild, unhindered, at a critical moment. The situation back then was no different from what it was now. In the past, the guilds of over 100 main cities had ganged up on Afterglow City. However, the Complete Reality sect had been the one to carry the flag at a crucial moment. Not only had they defeated all the invaders in one fell swoop, but they had also liberated Afterglow City and made it a neutral main city. This kind of feat couldn't be accomplished by any other big guild. How could a normal person look at such a guild? Especially the city master of Yu Huicheng, Iron Ox. He was an unpredictable existence. Since the day this person appeared in Yu Huicheng, he was destined to have an extraordinary gaming life. To Wang Yu, fighting dozens of people by himself was a common occurrence. Blood Alliance, the backbone of a big guild, was also killed by him to the point where they didn't dare to come online. In the end, they could only admit defeat. It could be said that as long as Wang Yu was there, no one could guarantee that their head would be theirs. The game had been open for close to a year. Those who weren't convinced by Yu Huicheng had been beaten into submission. Moreover, in the depths of their hearts, Wang Yu had cast an indelible shadow. Even more people treated this shadow as their faith. Chapter 1693. Everyone said that you were right, and I was right. The old and new players all had their own opinions, and no one was willing to accept the other. There was even a huge discussion going on the forums. One had to say that Rebirth players had a rare entertainment spirit. They were always finding fun for themselves. As for the Blood Alliance players, they naturally received the system notification. After receiving the notification, the Blood Alliance guild was in an uproar. Of course, there were old and new players in Blood Alliance too. When the new players saw that Xuanjin was the one to start a guild war, and it was even a death battle, they were filled with rage. D*MN. Is Xuanjin crazy? They are actually picking a fight? The old players acted like they were used to it. Nonsense! Who do you think Xuanjin is? Our coin-scattering guild leader went to provoke them. It would be weird if they didn't provoke him back. D*MN. Then what should we do? Should we fight or not? Some of the more timid players asked weakly, following which they were drowned by the other players. Nonsense! If we don't fight, then should we just wait for death? The nature of this guild war was different from usual. This was a death battle. In other words, if they lost, then there would be no Blood Alliance in the game. It could be said that this was a battle that concerned their life and death. Players in the game prioritized benefits above all else and had to think from reality. Without the skin, where would the hair go? If they didn't even have a guild, then Blood Alliance players would be no different from normal solo players. Guild benefits, point cards, equipment, and even leveling areas would all be lost. Blood Alliance was a big guild. Although Yu Huicheng had always been below Qiuanjin, in terms of resource distribution, Blood Alliance had the most. Blood Alliance players had enjoyed resources in the game for so long that it had become a habit. If they suddenly lost these, it would be the same as being wiped out. What was the point of continuing to play? Normally, when Qiuanjin did as he pleased, Blood Alliance could bear with it. After all, this opponent was a little difficult to deal with, and it didn't affect their benefits. However, now that they were at a life and death stage, how would the Blood Alliance players be willing to bow down and accept their fate? A big guild like Blood Alliance wasn't a pushover. Even when facing a terrifying opponent like Complete Reality Sect, they still had to give it their all in the face of danger. All of a sudden, the Blood Alliance players were filled with fighting spirit. The guild channel was filled with requests for battle. All of the players returned from a wilderness to defend the guild encampment, preparing to fight against Qiuanjin's sect. Even a rabbit would bite when it was cornered, let alone a bunch of arrogant and despotic people. With Blood Alliance's current stance, no matter how strong Qiuanjin's sect's dozen or so players were, if they were to face a guild of tens of thousands of players, they wouldn't be able to escape death. Seeing that the morale of the players in their own guild had been completely roused, Thousand Miles Crimson and the others were overjoyed. Thousand Miles Crimson even said in disdain, "Everyone says that Quan Zhen's sect leader Wu Ji is extremely intelligent, but in my opinion, he's only so. I can't bear to look at such a lousy move." That's right. Golden Light and the others all agreed. This bunch of kids really thinks so highly of Blood Alliance. Do they think everyone is Blood Red War Flag? Don't mention that trash Blood Red War Flag. Blood Thousand Miles wave his hands. How can such trash be a guild leader? The pitiful Blood Red War Flag couldn't escape the fate of being slandered in a foreign country. Achoo! At the same time, in Saga City, Blood Red War Flag suddenly sneezed a few times. He couldn't help but touch his nose. I can catch a cold in the game? Ding! Right as Blood Red War Flag was muttering to himself, his message bar flashed. Blood Red War Flag opened the chat, and a message popped up. Boss, not good. On Yu Huicheng's side, Qiuanjin declared war on Blood Alliance? What? Blood Red War Flag saw the message and his heart tightened. What happened? It seems like Thousand Miles brought people to surround Qiuanjin, and then Qiuanjin declared war on Blood Alliance. It was a death match. Looking at the message in front of him, Blood Red War Flag's head was in a daze. He sat down on the chair, and his eyes were filled with silence. Damn, the thing that he was most worried about had happened. This Blood Red War Flag still attacked Qiuanjin. What were Blood Red Wind Whisper and the others doing? Why didn't they stop Blood Red War Flag? Of course, the Quanjin sect's Blood Red War Flag wasn't worried. The only thing the Blood Red War Flag was worried about was the Blood Alliance. This was because Blood Red War Flag knew that Wu Ji wasn't the kind of person who would blindly send himself to death. Before doing anything, he would definitely judge the success rate. As for Wang Yu and the others from the Quanjin sect, they could maximize the success rate. Moreover, Wu Ji had always been cautious. Even if the success rate was low, Wu Ji would have a foolproof backup plan. This time, he dared to fight Blood Alliance to the death, which meant that Wu Ji was prepared to wipe out Blood Alliance once and for all. After all, Blood Alliance was raised by Blood Red War Flag. In Blood Red War Flag's eyes, Blood Alliance was their own flesh and blood. Now that their flesh and blood was being led to death by someone else, one could imagine how Blood Red War Flag felt. Before coming here, the Blood Red War Flag had repeatedly instructed him to stop the Thousand Miles Crimson and not let him offend the Quanjin sect. He had only been in Saga City for less than 2 hours. How'd he end up in such a situation? The more Blood Red War Flag thought about it, the angrier they got. They logged out of the game and went to Bloodwind Whisper's bedroom door and knocked. Very quickly, Bloodwind Whisper opened the door. Seeing Blood Red War Flag's angry look, Bloodwind Whisper was not surprised. He opened the door calmly and said, "Come in. Why didn't you stop Blood Red War Flag?" The first thing Blood Red War Flag did after entering the room was to yell at Bloodwind Whisper. Bloodwind Whisper was not angry. Instead, he poured a glass of water and handed it to Blood Red War Flag. "Do you think I could have stopped him?" This, Bloodwind Whisper's words directly blocked Blood Red War Flag's stomach of reprimanding Bloodwind Whisper. Wasn't that right? It wasn't like Blood Red War Flag had never come into contact with 1,000 miles, let alone Bloodwind Whisper. Even he, the guild leader of the Blood Alliance, was nothing. Blood Red War Flag still did not take them seriously. Not only did they not listen, but they also threw them to a remote place to eat sashimi. Bloodwind Whisper was just their incompetent advisor. Blood Red War Flag even dared to hit their master, so they would not take Blood Red War Flag seriously. After pondering for a moment, Blood Red War Flag calmed down and asked in confusion, how did things deteriorate to this extent? He really could not understand what Blood Red War Flag had done to provoke Xuanjin to the point where they would fight to the death. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.